I'm literally a communist.
Shut up, Wesley.
That is a disgrace.
Oi, oi. How are we all doing? Good to be back for some definitely not infuriating content, I assure you. Given what I know about what Yvette Cooper's going to talk about on Laura Koonsberg's show today, because I've seen the clips. And on top of having to deal with Yvette Cooper, we also have to deal with Victoria Atkins, who's even worse. So this should be a fun show today. It's all very bleak. Well, I'm glad you've been out in the garden. I've been out playing Magic today, to be fair, so I've also had a nice day so far. Time to ruin it with the British political system. Yay! Woo! Love it. Big fan. Big fan. Just go through all of your comments, see what you've been saying. What do you think about Labour's proposed back-to-work plan, helping the sick and disabled into normalcy and independence, or simply more of the capitalist meat grinder for companies to abuse? I mean, like, if you want to give them, like, the super benefit of the doubt, the rhetoric is awful. The rhetoric is just like, if you can work, you will work. It's a real kind of Arbeitsmachtfrei, like, ring to it. But, like, when you dig deep into the kind of policy that they're offering, like, it's just actually kind of retooling job centres to stop being this kind of impunitive system of, like, sanctions, etc. Which, to be fair, they've promised to get rid of and are actually not getting rid of. They're just retooling universal credit, which isn't great. But, you know, at the very least, it sounds like they want to help people get back into work rather than punish people for not seeking work, for example. But I don't think that the punishments are going to go away. I think that it's rhetoric rather than deliberate policy. But the rhetoric is bad because we're not changing the narrative in terms of how we look at those who are too sick to work, those who are too disabled, for example, who are already on the receiving end of really draconian like policy from the government, but also rhetoric from like the rightoid press, for example, treating disabled people like scroungers. Exactly, like we're never gonna know because it could all just be fucking lies. It could all be like completely rhetorical, or indeed it could be being done completely ideologically, and in fact people like Liz Kendall really do just fucking hate the disabled. Who knows? Who fucking knows? Like, it's just the Keir Starmer mystery box. Have I checked out Phil's video on GB Energy yet? I know she may have to comment on my GB Energy video. Let me just have a look, one sec. Okay, I've not seen Phil's videos, but can you praise it? We've done so much Phil already, and I don't want to sound like I just have like a hate boner for him. But if you can précis what he says in his video to try and explain it, because I feel like I did a pretty good job of outlining exactly what's going on here. Again, like people trying to say that it's just rebranded PFI. Like it's not the same as PFI because it's not like selling off existing public infrastructure to private companies to like run it in absentia. It's new money for new things. It's not taking public assets and turning them private like PFIs did with private debt. It's the government having a share of new companies, which whilst not being ideal, not being perfect, not what I'd want, isn't exactly the same as PFI. Wanted some Graham Hughes yesterday. You can't watch him without someone else these days. He's so tilting. Like, he's genuinely infuriating to watch. I can't. If we'd have had some time, I think it was on Friday where we were talking about like the internal party purges. I did have a Graham Hughes segment lined up about it, but like it's just genuinely too tilting to engage with. So. He goes over right-wing criticisms that are low-hanging fruit and ignores the lies about it being a publicly owned energy company from Labour. He explains what it is, although he fails to appreciate that most voters actually think it's an energy company. Right, fair enough. Oh, and again, if he's not like lying or anything, I just think that, you know, people who are watching Labour Social or who are watching a different bias don't want to understand the pitfalls of what happens when you lie to the public. They just want to know whether the policy is good or bad and then go tick the box next to the red team. He doubles the amount of Freery too with his stupid hat. I mean, I don't mean to like, shame people for their fashion choices. If he likes his hat, he likes his hat. but it does have big like Garpyar vibes. Even though I'm like the posh one, like even though I'm the posh one and he's the one from Merseyside, like even then, like the hat screams real kind of like going to Tanzania on my Garpyar kind of vibes. You found the Pfizer clip? Yeah. I was looking. I looked into it too. I got tagged in it on Twitter. It was just a clip of her saying, "Well, actually, no. Jeremy Corbyn wasn't there laying a wreath for people who organised the Munich massacre," which is true. Now, to be fair, though, in the clip, she's saying that he wasn't there laying a wreath for two people that they're talking about. He was. It is absolutely true that he was there laying a wreath in the Hammam-Shot cemetery, which has a bunch of people who were killed in an airstrike in Tunis by the Israeli government. In Tunisia, there were a bunch of members of the PLO killed in an airstrike that he was laying a wreath for at the time. But also buried in that same cemetery that he might have known about, he might not have known about, we don't know, were two members of the PLO who were assassinated by Mossad and the Abu Nidal organization outside of the bomb strike that he was talking about initially. Because Corbyn does mention this in his initial talk about the trip to Tunis to visit Hammam-Shot cemetery, where he says, and we also laid a wreath for people assassinated by Mossad in France, for example. Now, the one of the two that was assassinated by Mossad in France is Atef CSO, who was the communications officer for the Palestinian Liberation Organization throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now, he did have some links to Black September, but there's literally zero evidence he had anything to do with the Munich massacre. He was assassinated by Mossad because he was the go-between between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the CIA during the short period in which the Bush senior administration were having conversations with the PLO in the background behind the backs of Israel. So one can only assume that Mossad made up this shit about the connection to the Munich massacre to justify the fact that they were assassinating people outside of what the Americans wanted, because, it was spite over the fact that there was a PLO representative who was having connections with the CIA. So that's the thing that Faiza Shaheen was talking about in this specific clip. Although she is wrong, it did turn out that he was there relaying a wreath for the two people in question. It just so happens that the two people in question are not the people, don't have anything to do with what people say they had to do with. Like, again, I've been really, really looking into this. I've seen literally no evidence at all that either Salah Khalaf or Asif CSO were in any way connected to the Munich massacre. Literally, the only evidence they have is just Mossad said so. And quite frankly, I don't trust a single fucking word that Mossad says. I don't know about anybody else. Ignore the likes of Philina Scouser Lib Dem. Let's focus on Helena's analysis of actual political actors. I mean, yes, fair enough. I did like a bit of Supertansky response on Friday, and then Viv kind of said that we should do more Supertansky analysis. I do want to speak mostly about political figures and political actors, but I can't stay away too far from trying to respond to other creators in the space as well. I mean, Madge does it too, so. And also, can we shout out how good it was to have Madge on the show the other day?
Fucking neoliberalism.
Thank you for the prime sub, Wanyups. Appreciate you throwing your Bezos bucks my way this month, keeping me employed here on Twitch.tv. Thank you. Yeah, Madge has been really impressive throughout this kind of election season and throughout this parliamentary process. Again, somebody who was like full on like the tactical vote pill, who's just been continually pushed out by Labour, which I think it just shows you what happens when people get access to like the documents that first hand rather than viewing them second hand through other people talking about them. And also somebody who genuinely wants change and can't be railroaded into red team good, blue team bad team sports bullshit. He's a real critical thinker, and I think that's something that's sorely lacking in this space. No worries. It's just You pronounced it how it looked, but I appreciate you throwing your Bezos box my way this month. Plenty of great creators you could be giving it to, but you've chosen to give it to me, and I appreciate that. I do think disproving the super tense skin-filled rhetoric has value without being drama, especially if you're engaging with their arguments specifically. Well, yeah, exactly. That's why I thought it was worth bringing out at least once, just to have that response. Because I think, even though I even said during the stream yesterday with Kevin Viv that, like, I have no ill will towards Super Tansky personally. I don't think she's stupid or an idiot or whatever. I think she's naive, and I think that she's too team sports pilled. But I don't like hate her or want to get into like a drama or have beef. I just think that as somebody who is a big space within Cockwomble Twitter, it's really easy to use her as a vector with which to make the criticisms, to make substantiated criticisms of the tactical voting, red team good, team sports mentality rhetoric. I've had a kind of Red Bull to keep me awake, actually. Yeah, agreeing to Oslo too was stupid, I agree.
Fucking neoliberalism.
Hey, thanks you for 8 months of membership, Ben Shaw. Thank you again for the continued support of the channel with your continued membership. Before we get onto Laura Kay, though, should we just have a look at Labour's TikTok account? So Labour have decided that they're going to go peak how do you do fellow kids energy over on TikTok. So I don't know if anybody's seen on TikTok that there's like a viral song, which is just some girl saying, I'm looking for a man in finance who's 6'5", with blue eyes, and I forget what it actually is. Either way, it's just a song. It's just like a fucking remix. And they've decided to do a version of it for the Labour Party. And honestly, like the UK Labour Twitter, like TikTok account is like, it's real trying to appeal to like the fellow kids, yeah. Oh, Sunak's for sure throwing the election, yeah.
I'm looking for a new prime minister. Big plans, good vibes, change lives. Big plans, good vibes, change lives.
Like, literally, I'm just like... Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse, guys. It gets worse. So here is the political heavyweight that is the Labour Party, deciding to get people to vote for them by showing how much better at football Keir Starmer is than Rishi Sunak.
Messi, 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 immens Messi, encara 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 Messi, gol, 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 gol.
I mean, he's not terrible, to be fair, but I'm just like, come on, do you think that the TikTok kids are stupid? I responded to you about Oslo, right? Well, absolutely, yeah. Why would Phil make a video critical of the Labour Party? Oh yeah, Rishi Sunak's like TikTok vid was also cringe, but at least it explained policy and wasn't just like, haha, we can just win the kids over with the memes, like the dank memes. Like this one as well.
Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
This doesn't even make the meme doesn't even make sense. Like the meme doesn't make sense. Like it's supposed to be like a surprise. But Rishi Sunak turning up on your 18th birthday century. No, if the policy, it's not a surprise if they've already passed. They've already announced the policy. Like that's what are you talking about? I don't get it. I think the only good meme they've done is this one, just because like the Barry from EastEnders meme is never cringe. Would an 18-year-old know who she is? Oh, yeah, this particular clip is like a meme on TikTok. It's all over TikTok, this particular meme. Yeah, all the kids know Cilla Black now because of this meme specifically. Like, there is a green screen version people put on top of their TikToks to do, like, mock surprise or whatever. Just like it's like the same way how the Muslim preacher who goes, brother, what's that? What's that, brother? That's also like a meme in the same way this one. Again, with a green screen on it too. On the subject, Keir's been using football games to meet up with the lobbyists and discuss business. It's all over his register of interest. They pay for his tickets and food first. Yeah, I'm not surprised. But this one's like the good meme.
We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway.
I mean, yeah, like, even if it is cringe and it is Labour on TikTok trying to get down with the kids, I cannot say no. I cannot say no to a Barry from EastEnders meme. Like, it's never, like, I'm never not down with the Barry memes. Barry is a legend, it's true, yeah, absolutely. It is an excellent meme. True, that meme-based economy, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, like, at least Labour are trying. Like, I think Tories have just kind of given up. There's one other TikTok that I want to play you folks. And it's actually something that I think it's just like, there's something right. You'll hate me for this because I'm not gonna attack the Labour Party over this. But it's just this video of Angela Rayner like bringing out their battle bus, and like, I know she's a traitor, guys. I know that I don't mean to like that. I mean to pause. Like, I know that she's a traitor, guys. I know she's an absolute traitor, and she's sold her soul for a career. But like, she's just kind of adorable. Like, there's a bit right here where she's looking inside the fridge.
I have some samosas and cakes that have been donated. Obviously, we need Yorkshire tea. And then I have a fridge. And in this fridge, I have...
like, it gets ruined by the fucking stupid emojis.
A pint size of semi-skimmed milk. And...
like, 10 plus aura if you can name something pint-sized in the comments. And I'm just like... Come on, just let
neoliberalism.
How did this get here? We have a lettuce and lots of water because you have to keep hydrated.
I mean, I tell you what,
neoliberalism.
I tell you what you get from Angela Rayner. I get kids TV presenter vibes. Like, I genuinely get like kids TV presenter vibes. It's probably why I can't hate her after everything that she's done.
Fucking neoliberalism.
Like, after all that she's done so far, and how much she's betrayed us, it's like the kids TV presenter vibes.
Fucking
really.
Neoliberalism.
Thank you for the 5 gifted. That was James. Thank you very much for the 5 gifted. Appreciate you for the support. She's the best of a bad bunch. Yeah, I agree.
Fucking neoliberalism.
An MGG reference with the aura. I know, right? Next they'll be saying that she's got skibbity riz or some shit. I don't even fucking know what the kids say nowadays. There's only one Floella Benjamin. True, we love Floella Benjamin. This is definitely a Floella Benjamin stan channel. Have the Greens done TikToks? Yes, they have, yeah. Zach Polanski and the Green Party have done a bunch of TikToks, which seem to have gotten good traction as well. I wonder how many followers the Greens have on TikTok. Neil Buchanan Art Attack Energy. True. Yeah, Rachel Reeves. Actually, no. Most local news presenters are a little bit more animated than Rachel Reeves, I think. Like Radio 4 news presenter vibes, more like. There's like Rachel Reeves post standing outside the bus saying no gimmicks. Somebody point out she's in front of a gimmick. And like the tweet that she puts out as well is like, no more broken promises apart from literally all of the fucking pledges. Like, come on. I'm sure I am the Rizzler. It's true. Let me find out. Green. So the Green Party have 35,000 followers. So about quarter of the Labour Party. They're not getting as many views for their TikToks as Labour is. But they seem to be pretty good at posting information about. They're actually posting pretty regularly. So, you know, yeah, hopefully they'll be able to get at least some traction. What's Floella's secret to youth? She's not aged in 50 years. I mean, I hate to be crass, but black don't crack. Like that's just the long and short of it. Like I mean, I know it's like a meme, but it's just kind of true, really. At the end of the day. Norfolk Radio. I don't get into TikTok. It's not worth it. It'll steal hours of your life. Yeah, they're not shit posting though. They're shit posting. You made Hassan laugh by saying black don't crack. He was talking about racial dolls, although fucking shit. What was Cocoa Palm? So what I was going to talk about kids TV, like the kids TV program of my childhood. If certain sections of my audience will understand when I say just how much this was part of everybody's childhood. Was Dick and Dom and the Bungalow? Like genuinely, Dick and Dom and the Bungalow was the best kids TV program. I fucking love that shit. I love that shit for far too long. Yeah, literally, someone raised a question about Dick and Dom and the Bungalow in Parliament. It was Keith Faz, was it? Fuck, I can't believe it was fucking Keith Faz. Who raised a question about Dick and Dom and the Bungalow. Oh yeah, no, they mocked an MP. They literally mocked an MP on Dick and Dom and the Bungalow. So an MP got mad about Dick and Dom and the Bungalow, so they lampooned him on the show. I know, because the lampoon they did was called Question Mark. I think they just had like a wig on the chair, pretending it was like a meme of the like a parody of the of the MP in case in MP in question. Peter Luff. Yes, that's why they did it. It was Peter Luff that was the one that got mad about it, calling it lavatorial content. And when they mocked him on the show, they just had a wig on a chair and called him Piece of Fluff MP, which I think was very funny. Tracy Beaker was another thing that kind of rubber stamped my childhood in terms of kids' TV. Tracy Beaker and Ka-Ching is another thing that I grew up with. And now I realise that Taj from Ka-Ching is a capitalist pig dog. Class traitor. Oh yeah, I also remember that Neil Buchanan from Art Attack is in a heavy metal band. Raven! Oh my god, fucking... all of Raven is on YouTube. If you want to go back and rewatch literally all of Raven, it's on YouTube for you to watch for free. But unfortunately, if you do so, you'll need to pass your challenge or you might lose a life. Nightmare was your age. I mean, well, Raven wouldn't exist without Nightmare. My Parents Are Aliens? It's crazy to me with My Parents Are Aliens, right? With My Parents Are Aliens, how... it's really weird watching Fresh Meat back, realizing that the pervy lecturer is the dad from My Parents Are Aliens, and then the pervy lecturer's wife is Stella from Sugar Rush. Does he do pure harsh gutturals? No, I think it's like a new wave British heavy metal band rather than a good band.
Bogies.
Thank you for the 1,000 bits, 123 Cam 79. Who else wants to beat that bits number and also say bogies? We can play bogies but with bits, and rather it being how loud you can say bogies, it's how many bits you can donate whilst typing out the word bogies. And I definitely don't want you to do this because it makes me loads of money. Off topic, but could you do a section at some point about how much of an insufferable moron Gavin Barwell is? He just drives me nuts, and I'm sure he does the same to you. Oh, I fucking hate him. I fucking hate Gavin Barwell. Essentially trying to mark himself as like the serious conservative, when he was Theresa May's chief of staff, whilst they were doing all that shit in the background, dementia tax and everything, about just how, oh, well, now the Tory party's unrecognisable. I'm like, you were fucking in government when you killed 300,000 people, you bellend. Just so many of these, like One Nation Tory types pretending that they're one of the good ones. Like David fucking Gauke. David Gauke to this day still defends austerity. Dominic Grieve too. But the hashtag FBPE crowd, whatever it is, because these people voted against the Brexit deal. Suddenly this makes them the perfect Tories, even though they fucking made life miserable for poor people. By the time your son was a kid, he had the revolting neoliberal productivity agitprop Lazy Town with Sporticus to enjoy. Absolutely fucking hate that shit. Also, Paw Patrol is bourgeois propaganda. You know, when I say ACAB, I mean the fucking cop dog as well. I mean, Dick and Dom at the Bungalow is just like his was, really and true. I don't like. It's not that. It's like Dick and Dom at the Bungalow isn't that far removed from Tiz was. Zippy does look like Aid Davey. The evil guy from Lazy Town died a few years back. Yeah, Staffan Stefansson. It's really sad because the evil guy from Lazy Town was like the one good bit of the show. Also, like, We Are Number One is a banger. Remember Get Your Own Back? The thing about Get Your Own Back that I remember, first of all, I remember Dave Benson Phillips. I met Dave Benson Phillips randomly one day in Hyde Park, in Regent's Park of all things. He was just around, and I was walking through London, and I bumped into Dave Benson Phillips in Regent's Park. Really nice guy, both in real life as well. But Get Your Own Back, right? Do you know the song "Oh My God" by Usher? Or OMG by Usher, right? You know that song? It's exactly the same melody as the Get Your Own Back theme tune. Like, the Get Your Own Back theme tune is identical to fucking Oh My God by Usher. Go and listen to them both. And then I will prove to you your life has been ruined. And if you want another Usher song ruined, chat, if you want another Usher song ruined, listen out for the cowbell in Yeah. Listen out for the cowbell in Yeah by Usher. At the end of every 4 bars, and you will never unhear it. You'll never unhear the triangle in Yeah by Usher. Do you ever remember the series of Get Your Own Back where they incinerated the No? I do not know that. I don't know that. Anyway, let's actually get on to some politics now. We've been talking about kids' TV for half an hour. Let's actually watch some politics.
Hello. The second week of this election has seen a stumble from the front-runner. The saga of the long-serving left-winger Diane Abbott tore up Labour's careful script. So will Keir Starmer get back on track with his new promise to get migration down? Rishi Sunak's been giving away goodies for Tories' traditional voters. All the party's campaigns are now well underway. The antics and the announcements are coming thick and fast. So there are plenty of questions to ask. With us this morning to answer them, the Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, who'd be in charge of that migration plan if Labour wins, and the Health Secretary Victoria Atkins. Tired yet? You both look quite perky still, Yvette.
I'm raring to go.
Raring to go, Yvette?
It's really good to just
I might put like the kids' TV stuff on the second channel.
have the election actually up and running and to be able to get on with this.
Well, we certainly all got going, that's for sure. We'll talk to you in a few minutes. And in our first leaders interview today, we'll speak to Adrian Ramsey from the Greens. But beware, all of our politicians, our fact checker will test all of their claims as we go along. John Kerr.
I mean, as long as Mariana Spring isn't the one doing the fact check.
Will give his 60 seconds on Sunday on the polls.
Labour are still 21 points ahead of the Conservatives, though the lead does vary between 12 and 27 points.
And away from...
I'm sorry, no pollster is saying 12 points. Even Opinion have it at 20 points. Like, come off it. Stop trying to pretend that it's a closer election than it is.
From our election, there's the wild ride of the American race. I've been speaking to one of Donald Trump's lawyers who was alongside him in court.
Donald Trump is the victim of political selective prosecution.
And for the first time since he lost his back.
No, he's a victim of prosecution because he committed crimes and got prosecuted for them. Like, it's really not difficult. Like, you do crimes, you get prosecuted for them. The problem isn't that Donald Trump got prosecuted. It's that all the other ex-presidents all haven't been prosecuted for the shit that they did. Like, what, Clinton the fucking rapist? You know?
Battle to stay as the Tory Mayor of West Midlands. Andy Street joins us at the table. We're very welcome to you this morning. Labour peer Baroness Shami Chakrabarti is here, and the Lib Dems Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper joins us too. Morning. Let's start, as ever, with a look at what...
I just want Victoria Derbyshire to take over the show. I just wanted to take over the show forever. Like, those 3 weeks where Koonsberg was on some kind of leave or whatever it is. Like, it was blissful watching Victoria Derbyshire actually question the MPs. Vicky D,
is making the news. The Mail on Sunday splashes on calls to cut taxes to save the Tories. The Observer claims Sunak is in trouble over the promises he made to towns.
Like, all 4 top parties are there this week. You got Lib Dems, Labour, Conservatives and Greens.
Keir Starmer's told The Sun on Sunday, read my lips, I'll cut migration. More on that later. And Stormy Daniels, the witness in the Donald Trump trial, tells the Mirror, lock him up. As I said, we'll hear from one of his lawyers in that trial later on. Now, it has been a busy...
And again, I've been looking at a bunch of, like, I know that Joe Bird is campaigning hard on Merseyside and Birkenhead for the Greens. And I'm just like, why? Why are the Greens not just carrying around leaflets with Keir Starmer's face on the front of the fucking Sun? Like, why did every single person who's campaigning against Labour in Liverpool just have flyers everywhere with Keir Starmer's face on the front of the Sun? You'll win. You'll win immediately. Everywhere on Merseyside, doesn't matter where you are on Merseyside, right? Just Keir Starmer, he wrote it in the Sun, can't trust the guy, vote for somebody else. Simple, easy victory. Don't know why they're not. I would put up billboards all over Liverpool, with Keir Starmer's face writing for the Sun. Just watch the Al Jazeera Ford report doc again. The WhatsApps around Shami from Emily Oldknow, all revolting. Yep, disgusting, disgusting people.
Busy week, has it not? Shami, I'm going to come to you first. Our viewers will remember you're someone who's close to Diane Abbott, and she's been at the centre of a storm this week. It's still not 100% sure if she's actually going to stand as the MP, even though Labour is assuming that she will after the will she won't she saga. Do you think that she will stand again?
I hope that she will now, after this sometimes sordid week of unauthorised, anonymous briefings by overgrown schoolboys in suits with their feet on the table and maybe watching too much West Wing but not taking on its more progressive values. I hope, and by the way, I hope they remember it's supposed to be country first, not faction first. I hope she will take some time to consider, you know, what she wants to do, and that's literally what I've suggested.
I mean, when I said I wanted Keir Starmer to go to the fucking Sun, I meant the celestial objects, not the fucking paper.
As her friend, and I hope that's what she's going to do.
So it sounds like
Someone
there's very much
that.
still an open question, and you're hinting there perhaps that maybe she shouldn't.
No, not at all. I just think it's been pretty appalling, you know, trying to bully someone of her stature, not just in the party. I've been quite moved by some of the comments and the pieces that have been written by Conservatives and others. Sayeeda Varsi wrote a really lovely piece about what someone like Diane, as the first black woman MP, meant to her. I think it's important now for this not to be decided by...
Why the hell would Diane Abbott want a peerage? Why would anybody want a peerage? Like, especially if you're somebody who comes from a socialist background who doesn't believe in, like, unelected positions of power. Like, why the hell would you? Why on earth would you accept a peerage? I'd much rather be elected into a seat as an MP, as a member of parliament, representing people who've democratically voted for me, than being assigned a role in an unelected House of Lords.
Fans or detractors of my dear friend, I want her to, you know, just decide what she wants to do and take a few days over that.
And we'll talk about this more in the programme, but just to be clear, when you talk about the boys in suits, you're talking about people who work for Keir Starmer?
Well, no, because I have been assured, I have been personally assured by the leadership of the Labour Party, the senior-most people in the Labour Party, that these briefings were unauthorised, and of course they're anonymous. This is, you know, this is part of the Westminster.
I'm sure that they're telling you the truth, Shami. I'm sure that they haven't indeed inspected your wallet and sold you a bridge with some magic beans for free. Like, I'm definitely sure that the people in Keir Starmer's team would never, ever, ever lie to anybody about anything. At least not somebody from the Labour left. What a fucking turnout for the books that would be. Yeah, I've been personally assured about a bunch of lying bastards, yeah.
It's a bubble game. I don't think people out in the country give a monkeys about this nonsense. It's not good for Keir Starmer's leadership. It's not good for the Labour Party, and it hasn't been very nice for Diane and for common decency, frankly.
Andy, do you think it's changed the dynamic of this election?
But I think the thing that's coming out is it's not an issue on its own. It's actually part of the bigger picture where Keir Starmer is trying to ensure that he's got an ultra-loyal team around him. And I don't think that is necessarily a good thing for any party, indeed a business. Any organisation should have a breadth of thinking in its senior team. And I think that is the question that's coming out in the wider dynamic of the election. Is that sort of singular mindset, is that positive at all?
Daisy, parties, though, like to have MPs who do what they're told, don't they?
No, well, I mean, Liberal Democrats are a very internally democratic party. We pride ourselves on having our debates
Voting for no house building ever.
at conference, on having votes with our members. So we like and we embrace the internal democracy. What I would say on this issue with Diane Abbott is that I don't share her politics. I thought the article that got her suspended in the first place was pretty appalling, but I think Shami's right. There has been a huge amount of respect shown across the political spectrum, but I think, quite frankly, right now, in the middle of a general election, the voters want to hear about things like the NHS and the cost of living.
And they certainly do, and they also want to hear about issues in
Well, you can't say that, Daisy. You can't tell people to talk about real material issues that affect society. No, only Westminster psychodrama are allowed on these chairs.
and migration, and we're going to get on with that with Yvette Cooper. But
I mean, what I actually think, Becca, is that the people who are doing these briefings are lying to Starmer. There was an article in the Times today essentially saying that Starmer implicitly trusts the people that he has around him so much that he wouldn't believe that they would go behind somebody's back, or that he wouldn't believe they're doing something that's not in the party's interest or is just being done factionally. So genuinely, I believe that Keir Starmer is just too trusting, i.e. thick, to understand that the people in his team are lying to him about whether or not they've been briefing or not. He can't be that stupid. Like, according to this Times article, he is. And this is like not like random like Murdoch hack people. This is like genuinely like respected people, like Gabriel Pogren saying this. Like, there was a little thing that Aaron Bastani clipped out of the article. Let me find it. Also, by the way, like, I know that the Lib Dem person who jumped into the Discord was being a little bit cringe, but did we really have to go that hard on them? They came in good faith, I thought. Let me find out. I mean, there was a couple of things, yeah. Or maybe it wasn't Aaron that tweeted it out. Oh well. Either way, I think that he's just really... I mean, the article specifically said that he's trusting of the people around him. And I don't think that he necessarily wants to do the factional bullshit, but he thinks that the people who are doing factional bullshit aren't doing factional bullshit. And so he might be trusting them when they tell him that they're not doing their briefings when they clearly are. He was only annoyed because they said they stopped being a socialist because Corbyn lost. Yeah, that was the thing that I found weird, is why I asked, like, well, do you think that the socialism was why they lost? And B, on top of that, like, well, do you not want to then have, like, a more, like, pragmatic, I guess, socialist perspective rather than revolutionary? Well, then, like, you know, then why would you water that down by joining a party that is explicitly free market and liberal? That was very strange, yeah.
As we've been hearing, week 2 was not meant to be like this for Labour. Its careful plans were knocked off course by the Diane Abbott saga. They'd want to talk about antisocial behaviour and about green energy. And today, Labour wants to move on to migration, with Keir Starmer making a big promise in The Sun on Sunday, saying, read my lips, I will cut migration. So, Yvette, let's start then with that big promise. In 5 weeks, you could, if you win, be behind the desk in the Home Office in charge of migration. How many more people do you think should be able to come and live in the UK legally? That's what we mean by net migration.
So net migration has trebled since the last election, and that to a record high, really. And that has reflected particularly big increases in work migration. So Office of National Statistics will tell you that there has been a big increase. That's now the biggest factor. Work visas have doubled over a series of years. Work migration, even in the last 12 months alone, has gone up by around 50%. We think that that is a problem. We think that net migration needs to come down.
We have a Labour shortage of it. I know that Labour clearly want to talk about this to try and win over swing voters. Whatever. I even admitted in my debate with Phil that the UK public is so, like, anti-immigration as a concept. Not anti-migrant, but anti-immigration as in new people coming in. That it's a pretty difficult to win an election whilst not taking anti-immigration stance. But what I'm going to be doing throughout this segment is I'm going to be attacking the points on their merits rather than their political appeal to the population, for example. So this idea that giving out loads of work visas is a bad thing is really silly when these people are filling gigantic gaps in our workforce. We need people working in things like fruit picking, in social care, in the NHS, where we have a gigantic chasm of nursing staff, for example. These are all sectors of the economy that have labour shortages. Reducing the number of work visas is going to leave these industries on their knees. You can't just train up people in the UK. First of all, it takes a load of money and time to do that when we need these gaps filled like now. And second, of course, on top of that, it costs loads of money to do it. And third of all, there isn't really a big kind of pool of unemployed people to draw on, because unemployment is at 4%, which is close to record lows. So the real solution to this is immigration. And on top of that, there's all the stuff I talked about on yesterday's stream with regards to our population pyramid, which is massively top heavy. So we have a very small productive capacity in terms of working age people and a big kind of bubble of people about to retire. When they leave the workforce, our productive capacity is going to tilt downwards, and we're going to have to get taxed more to pay for the welfare payments, the benefit payments for the retired, which is what the state pension is. It's a benefit, it's welfare, which is good. It's good that it is, but that's what it is. Because they are now economically unproductive and they have to be sustained by the economically productive. And unless we increase the number of people in the productive part of the population pyramid, we're going to massively nick up our economy, and we're going to be taxed even harder than we're getting taxed already. What's the best way and easiest way of fixing the population pyramid problems that we have right now? Immigration of existing working age people. Sure, we should try and increase the birth rate so that new people coming up into the bottom of the population pyramid are also going to increase the productive capacity to try and balance out how top heavy it is. But there's still a big glut of people in the middle of that population pyramid where the birth rate has been low, where we'll need to increase that productive capacity through immigration. Look, this is the population pyramid I'm talking about. This is all people who are going to retire in the next 10 to 20 years, and this is the biggest cohort of people, yet the major working ages between 20 and 45, they're basically the same. Once these people start retiring, our population tree is going to be massively top heavy. So we're going to have real problems, real problems with our demographics, unless we get more people immigrating to work directly to increase productivity in this particular section of the pyramid, so that it comes outwards wider than the demographic of people who are going to be retiring soon. Because it's really dangerous for the economy. We're going to have some real stagnation, because again, productivity is the driver of economic growth. And remember, Labour's first key mission that they talk about all the time is having the highest growth in the G7, the highest sustained growth in the G7. And this is not a recipe for highest sustained growth in the G7 if you're going to cut down working age visas. And on top of that, a reduction in migration will want to get down student visas as well, which is like an export good that's subsidising UK students, increasing our base of people who are educated, getting highly skilled jobs. And on top of that, brings in foreign capital to be able to fund our public services as well. So bringing down immigration in both work visas and student visas are both economically illiterate policies. Again, I understand why they're doing it. People don't want immigration for cultural reasons, but, these are the people who will need these immigrants coming in to pay their pension when they will retire in 20 years' time. Otherwise, they're going to lose their quadruple, quintuple, sextuple lock or whatever they've got at that point after they've been pandered to for the 1,000th time.
And that means you have to tackle the issues that have been driving that overseas recruitment by employers. So we support the measures that the government has introduced in recent months, and some further restrictions on visas. But we're also saying you've got to get to the heart of it. You've got to tackle those skills shortages. And we're setting up a new system that would link the immigration system and skills and training plans, workforce plans in the key sectors that are driving this.
And if your hope, though, is to bring the numbers down by how much? So I'll ask you again, how many people should be allowed to come here?
So we're not setting a target. And the reason for that is because, partly because, to be honest, every time the Conservatives have done this, frankly, then they have just ended up being totally all over the place, ripping it up, and it's discredited the whole system.
But I'm asking what you would like.
No, I understand.
It's again, like, it was Boris Johnson. It was Boris Johnson as Prime Minister in 2019 who relaxed the visa rules for foreign students, explicitly on the platform of we should be a global Britain, inviting people from around the world to take advantage of our dynamic economy or whatever, and all of the cultural and economic benefits that they bring. Like, this is a good argument, I would say, that Boris Johnson was making for why immigration is good. As you say, right, the more productive capacity we lose as our population pyramid becomes top heavy, like, the pension age will have to go up. So we're placating the cultural wishes of current and future retirees, soon to be future retirees, at the expense of our own taxation as working age people and our own ability to be able to retire at the same age that they retired. Because they're going to retire at 67 or whatever. Vote for policies that get rid of the productive base that we need to retire at the same age. And then when we retire, it'll be like at 70 or something. Or we'll have a worse pension, for example. Like, it's super difficult to pass this electorally. I get it. But again, I'm not critiquing this on electoral grounds, just on utilitarian grounds on whether the policy is good. And it's a bad policy.
Just to finish the point, but also because from one year to another, there are variations. So, for example, the pandemic means the net migration figures, of course, fell, but the Homes for Ukraine visa rightly meant that the figures increased because of the war in Ukraine.
But people would like more clarity than just saying, oh, we won't set a number. Maybe you might want to set a goal of a proportion to bring it down. Last year, the most recent figures say net migration was 685,000 people. So when you say you want to bring it down, what do you mean? Do you mean by 1, by 1,000, by 100,000, by 200,000?
No, we clearly want to see significant changes in place because we have seen the numbers treble. We have supported the government's changes that they've made. Those have yet to...
Again, just to make sure everybody is crystal clear what I'm saying here, I think it's good we have a low pension age at 67, or not even low like internationally, but lower than it otherwise would be if this continued. I think it's good that we have a pension with a triple lock. I like all of these things. I just don't want to lose the necessary policy in terms of demographic that we need to support having these pensions that we currently do. I would like them to be more lucrative. I would like to have a higher tax base by taxing the rich and get better pensions, because there are better pensions over in Europe because they've taken account of their demographic problems, whereas we haven't necessarily, or at least we were. Now we're going to, arrest that momentum, for example. But I'm not saying it's bad that these pensions exist. It's clearly good. I want to have access to them myself. But I'm just talking about the ways in which it's necessary to have immigration to ensure we can fund it.
Play through, and those will lead to further restrictions on
already
visas.
Have been some falls, in fact. But I just want to press you on this point, because a few months ago, somebody one of your colleagues, the Shadow Chief Secretary, Darren Jones, told us a normal level would be around 200,000. So is that what you mean? Is that the kind of number?
Well, again, and I understand the question, and I know that you're effectively trying to suggest I set a target or a broad target. I'm not going to do that. We are going to be clear. Net migration must come down. We believe it's really important, and what Keir has set out is commitments that we will bring net migration down. But just go to the heart of what we would do, so that gives you a sense of the differences that we would make. Engineering visas have doubled in the last few years. Engineering apprenticeships have halved. Construction visas have trebled. Construction visas are down by 50%. Social care has gone from 3,000 visas a year to hit over 100,000. At the same time that the government was halving the social care recruitment programme in the UK. So our system would say we would have both restrictions on the visas, but also have this requirement to put the new training and the skills and the recruitment plans in place.
And again, this doesn't work. This doesn't make any sense. Again, unemployment is close to record lows. There isn't this glut of unemployed people that you can just draw upon with investment in skills to be able to fulfill these gaps in the labour market. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to increase the productive capacity enough. Again, the demographics, as we've shown you before, are the things that's the problem. Like, we have historically low unemployment in this country, like low workforce participation rate, but that's always kind of been the case. Obviously, if you fix the NHS and the waiting lists, there'll be more people available who are not off sick, for example, which is also a problem. But this idea that you can just replace immigration into the labour market with training existing unemployed people, that doesn't work, because most of the unemployed people are a tiny minority of the broad base which we could have for people working in this country.
That is a laudable goal, to try to train up more British workers in order to fill those posts. And yet I think many people watching this morning will want to know more clearly what you mean by bringing immigration down. I'm not asking you to set a target. I'm asking, what kind of thing do you mean when you say a significant change? And a member of...
Isn't unemployment only at record lows because Tories reduced the number of hours from like 10 to 1 per week? Unemployment is at record lows because we have high inflation, or we had high inflation. So what's happened in the labour market as inflation has risen and people have demanded higher raises, for example, what's this done is that's been able to happen because the labour market has tightened. The labour market has tightened over the course of the pandemic. The extra money in the economy from the economic stimulus during furlough, for example, that's gone into the hands of consumers, therefore stimulating the economy and creating jobs for people, for example. And then they fill those jobs. And then they compete for higher wages. It's why people were worried about there being a quote-unquote wage price spiral. There's a thing called the NIRU, which is the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. And what that means is, under a kind of like within capitalist labour markets, you can control inflation by ensuring that there is enough competition within the labour market to drive workers' wages down. And that's a control over inflation, if you think that people's consumptive power is controlled by how much employment there is. But if unemployment gets too low and there's no competition amongst workers to get jobs, and instead it's firms competing for labour, that pushes up wages, which pushes up consumption, which pushes up aggregate demand, which pushes up inflation, which creates a wage price spiral. So unemployment is low because workers are being able to compete for wages from employers, and employers are desperate to employ people. And so that's why unemployment kind of it was record low at 3% last year. Then interest rates went up, investment went down, the number of available jobs went down, therefore the competition stopped being between firms and became more between workers. It stopped being a seller's market and started becoming a buyer's market, which means wage growth has capped off. But also inflation has come down, but also means unemployment has increased slightly too.
Of your party, a member of the Shadow Cabinet has previously said to us that 200,000 would be a normal level. So do you agree? Would that be a normal level?
And I understand the point you're making, Laura, but I really am not going to set a target.
But isn't it meaningless to tell people that migration must come down and then not even put a vague number on it, not even say you'd like to see it halved or you'd like to see it come down by 25%?
So I think what we're doing is taking a sensible approach by saying, instead of the way that what the Conservatives have done is they've just... I know, but the reason it's important to show why we're taking a different approach to this. What we're doing is setting out the policies we will pursue so people can see the kind of difference that they will make. So when you look at, for example, the way that in 18 months, you saw this massive increase in social care visa recruitment from abroad. We shouldn't be in a situation where our social care sector has to recruit so heavily from abroad.
What social care bosses?
That is literally how our current demographics work, Yvette. You will not be able to recruit unless you do this. Like, this is just, you're talking nonsense economics. I'm sorry, this is just nonsense. I know, right? I get it. It's irritating that the question you're being asked is a nonsense one, putting a random figure on what you want immigration to be, because that's stupid, right? It's always going to change, it's always going to be different. You can't guarantee that you'll meet those figures. Don't put a figure on it, just say you want a vague idea that it will reduce. I get why she's answering that way. That's fine. That's not a problem, and I think that she's right to feel aggrieved by the question continually being asked when it's not a relevant question. But your response of saying we can train people up at home is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Yeah, exactly.
Say is they desperately need the staff. So who are you saying should not come? And who are the rogue employers or bad bosses that Keir Starmer is talking about?
Well, take engineering, for example. Engineering has been on the shortage occupation list for decades, and yet there's been no proper plan to make sure that we get the engineering training we need in the UK, and the opposite has happened. Engineering apprenticeships have actually halved. So Labour's not only setting out plans to reform the apprenticeship levy so that we can actually get more training in place, but also setting out plans to get more people back into work, because we would increase the UK workforce. If the ambition that Liz Kendall has set out, that would be over 1 million in people, more people in the UK residents, in the workforce. We're setting out those things, but we're also saying, look, if you've got something like engineering or social care or health or IT or construction, those are the 5 key sectors we identify now will need major workforce plans in place.
And all of
that
those
will show
take
how we
time.
can get the recruitment here in the UK, not simply have this continual dependence
But if
on
you won't
overseas
tell us by
recruitment.
how much you want to reduce migration, can you tell us by when viewers could expect?
Yeah, exactly. Shortage of healthcare professionals. That's like the big gap that we have. But Keir Starmer was explicit when he was interviewed on STV that he didn't want to recruit more people from abroad for the NHS. He said the NHS relies too much on recruiting from abroad. And I get why people from the left would say that. We don't want to take healthcare professionals from other countries, but other countries overtrain healthcare professionals in the way that we undertrain. We undertrain because the BMA in like the Blair years, when they were more right-wing, tried to put a cap on the number of medical places to maintain the competitiveness in the labour market. I think that was a bad policy, but I think the BMA have changed now. But there are plenty more people with healthcare qualifications from abroad because they overtrain and we undertrain. It's as simple as that. It's fictionalism. The voting base still thinks in terms of immigration displacing native workers, so they're acting as if that's true in the market right now, when the only sense we have of a collapse in GDP is asset prices that have been hit by the interest rate bump. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ashrand. Yeah, it's really important to note as well, before people in my comments start talking about how I want to undercut British workers or whatever, as if the number of jobs in an economy is finite. No, the number of jobs in an economy is proportional to the size of the economy. If you have more people in the economy, more consumers, then that means that there are a bigger economy and therefore there are more jobs. Like, immigrants coming in are not taking anybody's jobs, they're creating more jobs by there being more productive capacity for everybody.
Expect there would be a significant difference if Labour wins the election?
We would expect to see the numbers coming down swiftly. We have supported some of the measures that are expected to come in next place. And we also want to make sure that we can move quickly on some of these recruitment areas that really, it's just not justified to have the overseas recruitment. I think at the heart of this, there is a difference in approach. What the Conservatives have done over the last 5 years is have effectively a free market, unregulated approach to migration. We don't think that's right. We think you need intervention. You need both controls. The system has to be controlled and managed. And you also need the interventions to have a proper managed plan
and it's the
around
Migration
the workforce,
Advisory Committee, which is an independent body that sets actually which industries can bring
and we
other
would
people in.
strengthen that.
And you know what, it's fine to say that. It's fine to say you want to have managed migration so that you can get people in specifically of certain age demographics to fix the population tree. Like, that's not a problem. I don't really have a problem with that. But it is very funny. It is very funny to hear all of these things after the pledge of to defend migrants' rights from the leadership election from Keir Starmer, an immigration system based on compassion and dignity. And then here is Yvette Cooper holding a sign that says "Refugees welcome." You know, how times change, innit?
But
we would strengthen that.
I want to move on then to illegal migration.
Yes.
And again, actually, it's a really good point. Increase immigration, increase the minimum wage. I actually disagree with the minimum wage part, but what you do want, right, the place where immigrants can cut wage demands, right, the place where an increase in immigration makes it so that some wages go down is in sectors which are already competitive. Okay? So if you have a sector where people can already bargain a lot for good wages because there's a shortage of some types of workers, for example, in the private sector, like, say, for example, like, truck drivers, haulage drivers, for example. This was a really big thing in the kind of post-Brexit world because we had a load of Polish haulage drivers coming over here, where because the demand for haulage drivers doesn't really change that much. If only haulage drivers come into the country, the supply of haulage drivers go up, therefore the price goes down. Therefore the labour market will determine that their wages should be lower. That's why that's a time when immigrants can drop wages for certain sectors of the economy. How do you fix these things? Sectoral bargaining, trade union agreements. Rather than having a minimum wage, which would only really be good for low-end professions or low-paid professions, in skilled professions where increase in skilled workers might dilute the labour market, have a collective bargaining agreement. Protect your wages through having a demands-driven agreement between your trade union and your business. That means it doesn't matter what happens in the labour market, you're protected by the agreed wage across your sector. That's the way that you do it without worrying about the existing workforce having their labour power diluted.
Now, on day one, if you win, you would be dealing with a large number of people who have come to this country without permission. There are more than 100,000 people stuck in the system. Do you rule out sending asylum seekers to another country to have their claims processed?
So we're not going to do the Rwanda scheme.
That's not my question. I'm asking you something different.
But that is the kind of scheme that you're talking about. We're not going to do the Rwanda scheme. The things we have to do, the first priorities is the Border Security Command to prevent boats arriving in the first place.
Well, hang on, let's stick with what I've asked you first of all. Let's finish
that sentence and then I will answer your question because it's relevant. To clear the backlog and to end asylum hotel use and to put a new returns and enforcement unit in place to actually get the proper returns where people have no right to be here. So your question was, are there future arrangements and so on? Keir has always said we would look at what works, and there are different kinds of, I think there's sort of offshore processing arrangements and things that have already been used at different times in the past. For example, the Dublin Agreement did mean that under that scheme, some people were returned to France or to Germany or other countries and had their claims processed there.
So you wouldn't do the Rwanda scheme. We've heard that many times from Labour politicians, but you are saying that you might potentially send asylum seekers who are stuck in the system here to another country to have their claims processed. That might be something you look at.
Well, that's certainly what used to happen as part of the Dublin scheme, and we'd look at what works. But the priority is the border.
See, not even rolling it out. Hashtag refugees welcome, though, chat? That's with a U-turn, isn't it, Yvette? Getting used to it from members of the shadow cabinet, aren't we? Yeah, exactly. Like, again, we will do the same thing as the Tories, but we will do it more competently.
Security Command, and then also ending asylum hotel use and clearing the backlog.
How quickly do you think you would stop using hotels? Because if you did it overnight, thousands of people would have nowhere to go.
Well, some of the initial assessments and plans that we had done looked at that being possible to do.
Well, the Dublin Agreement is a returns agreement. Like, the Dublin Agreement allows you to return people to their first safe point of origin unless they have a legitimate claim within your territory. So you can always send people back to their country that they first arrive at within the European Union. That's the Dublin Agreement, if I remember correctly.
Within a year of having the additional staff in place, we obviously will still need to look again at what the crisis is really that we inherit from the Conservatives, because we understand really that the backlog is actually starting to go back up again because of the way they're just not taking decisions, and actually the costs are just massive at the moment.
But it might take you a year or so to get to grips with that.
That was our original assessment, that would take around a year to end asylum hotel use. But we are very clear, we need to start saving money straight away. It is costing the taxpayer billions and billions of pounds for this failing system.
There's so much we could talk about, but I want to raise something that we've talked about a lot on this programme around the risks to children online and with mobile phone use. Now, one of the casualties of calling the election date was that the new law to entitle bereaved parents...
Yeah, literally 10 years of just blame the Tories for everything that's going wrong, rather than actually creating national renewal,
access to their children's data that had been on their mobile phones or tablet was dropped. It didn't make it through. Would Labour commit to doing that, to making that change straight away if you win?
We do need to pursue this again, and there's a series of areas where we need really quite, I think, urgent action around online safety, around implementing online safety measures, but also the kinds of things that you're talking about.
That's a very specific thing. It was promised to those families. Would Labour do it straight away? You would. OK.
Now we would as fast as legislation is possible, Rosie.
Now we have to talk about Diane Abbott, and Shami Chakrabarti has vocalised what a lot of people, I think, have felt this week, that this was a very ugly row.
I'm thinking about buying a holiday home in Africa. Has anyone heard of any upcoming property bargains? Well, actually, unfortunately, all of the new houses in Rwanda, fortunately for Rwanda, are being built as social housing. Can't build social housing in the UK, can you, Tories? But you can build social housing in Rwanda with our taxpayers' money just fine. Just fine. Why are people allowed to say illegal migration? It doesn't exist if there are no legal routes. Exactly. The fact that Laura Kuenssberg, the person who is literally the main political commentator on the BBC, is allowed to use her platform to essentially use Tory party spin as basic questioning. Because it's not illegal migration, it's irregular migration. That's what the Government calls it on its official website. It's just Tory party spin to describe it as illegal migration when it's not. And she just calls it legal migration even though it isn't. Like, that's how much of a fucking Tory she is, that she just takes Tory lines on this verbatim. Such a pathetic, spineless worm she is.
And somebody who's much admired by many people in the country was very unpleasantly treated. Was Diane Abbott offered a peerage to stand down as an MP?
Not that I know of. I don't think that's the way that the system works. You have to have proper systems in place that have to go through the independent Appointments Commission for the House of Lords.
So as far as you know, she was not offered a peerage in order to stand down, as been reported this morning. Keir Starmer said for many months while this was all going on that Diane Abbott's investigation was still being pursued, when actually we know now it finished 5 months ago. Why wasn't he straight about it?
So I don't know what the processes have been. I know that when you have these independent complaints processes, then there can also be conclusions that it comes to other steps that need to be taken. I don't know what the course of this one has been.
Why have you not been told? Again, they keep doing this, just, no thoughts, head empty, not being briefed on this very obvious question I was definitely going to get asked before coming on the programme. Like, come on, we can all see that you're just being idiots, deliberately obtuse.
And it's probably right that I shouldn't, as a member of the Shadow Cabinet. It's not something for the Shadow Cabinet to be involved in. Obviously, I think, look, everyone would want these processes to happen as swiftly as possible. I'm really glad it is now resolved now with Diane, and I'm glad that she's back in the Parliamentary Labour Party. I think that's really important.
And would you like her to stand? Shami Chakrabarti says she's thinking about it. Would you like to see her run again as the MP for Hackney Stoke Newton?
I would obviously support her if she decides to stand. It has to be
the same.
Well, no, but it has to be Diane's decision. I did listen to what Shami said about, if that's Shami, who's very close to Diane, is saying this is for Diane to decide, and I would completely support that. Diane has been, continues to be a really important figure in the Labour Party, not just because of the trailblazing people have talked about, but also some of the things she did, for example.
Who's being a misogynist in chat? Yeah, let's try and make sure we're a little, we're being nice in chat.
She was crucial to exposing the Windrush scandal and holding the government to account on that.
OK, Yvette Cooper, thank you. There's so much we could have talked about, but we covered a lot of ground. It's great to have you in the studio always. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, Rishi Sunak has, of course, been busy around the country too. Let's have a look at what he's been up to, whether kicking a ball, whether feeding some lambs, that old chestnut on the campaign trail, or visiting workplaces. The Tories have been churning out more policies, I think, than the other parties so far. But will it make any difference to them in the polls? Now, Victoria Atkins is the Health Secretary for England, and she's here with us this morning. It's always good to have you with us too. Let's talk about promises then, because that's what elections are about in a big way, past and present. So today you're announcing 100 new GP surgeries, but we've checked the figures and you've shut 450 since 2013. So aren't you trying to fix your mistakes?
Hi, Laura. And in terms of promises, of course, we have put these promises forward at the election. My promise to the British people is that I want and am reforming our National Health Service to be faster, simpler and fairer. And one of the ways that we're doing this, you're right, is to build new GP practices, but also to refurbish a further 150 GP practices. We also want to ensure that we bring healthcare closer into our community. So we're
Been amazing to see you on Novara. You've loved watching my channel grow even when you were just less active in the community from abroad. I really appreciate Amity Island. You've been a long time viewer of the channel, and I appreciate that you've stuck it out so long. Thank you.
We are building on the success of Pharmacy First, which we started at the beginning of the year, and we want to expand the services available for that, because if we can have the most basic conditions treated in pharmacies, then of course that frees up GP appointment times.
The problem with that, though, is, as we've already said, you shut 450 GP surgeries since 2013, and if you look at what's happening with pharmacies, well, actually, the funding for those services was down a third since 2015, and more than 1,000 of them have shut. So in both of these cases, might be all very well you promising that now, but I think it's going to sound to like a lot of people this morning, you're just trying to unpick mistakes that the Tories have already made.
So with pharmacy...
What's that? Scrutiny of any time period before 2019? That's crazy. Also, by the way, if you're enjoying the content, you can subscribe on Twitch for $4.99 and for free with Twitch Prime by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. It gets you a free subscription every single month, which gets you access to my archive live streams, and also gets you access... Sorry, it gets you access to ad-free viewing, on Twitch, as well as my animated and static emotes in Twitch chat. If you want to have a message read out, 100 bits gets you text to speech over on Twitch as well, if you want to do that. If you've got a message you want read out on YouTube, you can super chat. Any value super chat I will read out as long as the message is not rude. If you become a member on YouTube, that gets you access to my archive live streams, as well as my static emotes in YouTube chat and in YouTube the comments section. It's only 99p. It's cheaper than a can of Red Stripe. But if you want to support the stream, the best way to do it is to gift memberships on YouTube. So if you want to gift a donation, but you don't have a message that you want read out, you can gift memberships at 99p each, equal to the value of the donation you want to donate. That is the best way to support the streams. It boosts the stream and the algorithm, helps spread the love around, and is much better revenue split for me than Twitch would be. So if you do want to support the stream, gifting membership's always the best way to do it.
We know that 4 out of 5 people are within a 20-minute walk of their nearest pharmacy. And importantly, there is a much higher concentration of pharmacies in deprived areas, which means that we will be able to, for these basic conditions, we will be able to secure faster access to healthcare.
But the point here is that you are replacing services that had disappeared.
Forgive me, if I may, on the GP point, we in fact have 2,711 more GPs working in the NHS than even in 2019.
And the population is bigger than it was.
And we've seen record numbers working across primary care. We have some 39,000 staff. And if you go to some of the GP practices that I see on my travels as health secretary, you'll see that the practices have not just GPs, but they're supported by physios, they're supported by nurses, they're supported by paramedics. So there are different ways in which people can access primary care.
And no one for a second, but the point is this, nobody for a second would want to say that there isn't great care.
How do you link your Amazon? So if you jump over to Twitch, and then if you just Google, if you go to twitch.tv/NoJusticeMTG, if you search Amazon Prime Twitch, or search Prime sub on Twitch, or link Amazon Prime to Twitch, follow the instructions, and then on the Twitch page click subscribe. Once you've linked it, there'll be a box to check that says use my Prime subscription, and that will allow you to subscribe for free. And again, it gets you all the benefits of being a Twitch subscriber, but it's again, it's at no additional cost to yourself as a Twitch Prime subscriber already, and also gives me some of Jeff Bezos' money, so it's well worth doing.
In lots of parts of the country. Nobody would want to say that.
Well,
the
Labour
point
tries to paint that picture.
The point I'm asking you to address is that you're making promises today about GPs and you're making promises today about pharmacies. But on both those fronts, since the Conservatives have been in charge, there have been many closures of GP surgeries, there have been many closures of pharmacies, and voters know that, they see that in their own communities. So why should they trust the promises that you're making to them now?
Because we made a
Must be really embarrassing as a Tory going out there every day and pretending you have a chance. It's just damage limitation. Because again, all of the comments that they have to do are just, here's what we're going to do to fix the mess we created. It's like, will you trust us to fix all of these things that are broken because we've been in charge of them? Like, yeah, of course, it's like, how do you defend this shit? How do you defend 14 years of failure? How do you defend an NHS with gigantic waiting lists? Like, how do you defend, like, failing on the things that you promised your voters you'd do, like reduce immigration? I think it's a good thing that we've increased immigration, but their voters certainly didn't fucking want it. And they just have to go to them and say, why do you trust us on stopping the boats, even though we've not stopped the boats? Like, yeah, no, of course. Like, of course they're going to be getting absolutely fucking wiped out. Foregone conclusion, because everybody hates them, even their own voter base. Can't see beyond Tory ideology at this point. Yeah, because again, they think they've been doing the best that they can, because they've been following like Thatcherism as dogma without bothering to realise that people don't want it, it doesn't work, and all of the things that people would like to see material gains from have all been destroyed by your continual following of the ideology.
Because I'm literally a communist.
really serious promise at the 2019 election that we would ensure that there were 50 million more GP appointments a year than in 2019. We hit that target this year, and indeed we have exceeded it. 62 million GP appointments were delivered in the last year. And what that means is it's an average of 44 more appointments per GP practice, and we know that an average GP practice delivers some 50,000 appointments a year. The point about GP practices closing that you've raised, of course there will be churn around England with a population of 55 million.
It's 450, it's a bit more than churn.
But what we are doing with this is building, as I say, new GP practices so that...
Yeah, why didn't you agree with the pay demands then? Why aren't you giving them pay restoration? Why aren't you trying to retain them?
We can
That's
offer
your fault.
even more appointments than we already are doing. There are 1 million GP appointments every single working day in the National Health Service in England. And so the scale of this is enormous, but we have very clear plans, not just on the provision of bricks and mortar, but also training up our GPs. We want, through our long-term workforce plan, which has been in operation now for nearly a year, we want to see a doubling of GP training places by the end of the decade.
Let's then talk about a different kind of promise. Your Prime Minister's famous promise to get waiting lists falling. Now, he promised that at the beginning of 2023, but people in this election will be judging you on your record over the long term. And I want to show you what's happened to waiting lists over the long term. And this shows very clearly before COVID and before the NHS strikes, waiting lists were already on the rise. Now, of course, they went up very significantly during COVID, but the point here is that our viewers can see during the period that the Conservatives have been in charge, waiting lists have gone up and up and up. Now, are you proud of that? Because to many of our viewers, everybody knows this in their real life. Everybody knows somebody who's waiting. Everybody knows somebody who's in pain.
So if I may just deal with the graph first of all. We know how hard the pandemic hit the NHS. And that is a fact. We know, for example, that the number of cancer referrals has increased massively since the pandemic because, completely understandably, because of lockdown and so on, people were not able and did not feel able to go into hospital to get things checked out.
But the point here is this happened before the pandemic.
If I may, I promise you I'm going to get there. So when I look at, as I do every single day, when I look at where we are now as opposed to in 2010, there are a couple of themes that emerge.
Just like, I get things, what's frustrating, I don't really have to respond to this other than just stop being shit, stop having a terrible idea, stop believing stupid shit that doesn't work. Like our top tier political analysis on the No Justice stream today, just Tory is bad because all they do sucks and they hate the NHS and they want to destroy it and they don't like spending public money and won't tax the rich. Like, you didn't do any capital investment for like a decade and they were fucked. Like how many more times do I have to say that if you don't spend money on the NHS it'll fucking fail? Like, get rid of the private companies. We all know the score now. And it's like, we'll bring down the waiting lists by still being shit at governance because that's how the Conservative Party works.
First of all, demand on the NHS is increasing at a rate that I think even 15 years ago, health professionals would have been surprised by. That's because we're living longer and we are developing more conditions, we're living with more conditions. But in response to that, we have provided 25.6 million more outpatient appointments than in 2010. That's in a year.
But the point, Health Secretary, is that I think people do not feel reassured by statistics. They feel upset that they are waiting.
Thank you, Shami Sengupta, for the $4.99 super chat. Knowing the way neo-Labour works, taking their cues as US lapdog from Biden, expect the youth online policy to be a ban on TikTok. I mean, potentially. I mean, the Tories were definitely looking at a ban on TikTok. Although, to be fair, they're doing it because they think it's Chinese spyware, whereas they are open in the United States that they're banning TikTok because people are too pro-Palestine. Like Mitt Romney was super open about it. Not one person in the medical industry is surprised that as people live longer, they might require more care. Well, exactly. But again, like, this wouldn't be a problem if you had a proper tax base, including the richest in society. But we don't have that.
Longer, they feel upset that over a period of many years, many people believe the quality of healthcare that they receive and that they can expect to get from the state has declined, despite record amounts of cash going in.
So because of this demand, our response has been to put in place recovery plans after the pandemic. And we have seen waiting lists fall by 200,000 since I've become Health Secretary. But importantly,
No, thank you, Paul. Appreciate the good work. Cheers for jumping in today.
We have been focusing, as you rightly say, on those longest waits, and we have virtually eliminated the longest waits, 18 months and above. That is in, I have to say, contrast to Labour in Wales. They run the NHS in Wales. They have the longest waiting times in Great Britain.
We talked about that last week, and we've already talked to Labour in the programme. But one of the problems
well,
here...
it's important because it's evidence as to how they run a health system, and they have longer waiting lists than in England.
No, but Wales, they measure the waiting lists differently. Labour also have to deal with like the devolved funding model, who don't have access to the central bank in the way that Westminster do. Like they have, the chips will fall where they are in terms of Welsh Labour, but in terms of state policy on the NHS, that's you're entirely in control of the purse strings and can issue fucking bonds. Like, and I'm sorry to say I'm sick of this. Well, Labour ran NHS in Wales, that's why it's bad. It's just a complete diversion.
Point about what we are doing to tackle it with our elective recovery plan. What that means is our recovery plan to help with waiting lists. We know now that the average waiting time for people is just under 15 weeks. That's 15 weeks. We are absolutely, if we carry on with our plan, we will absolutely hit that target of 18 weeks as we set out in the NHS Constitution. And there are doctors and nurses working around the clock to make that happen.
When you talk, though, to doctors and nurses or people who run hospitals or GPs, what is the almost universal cry from them is you can't fix any of this. You're not going to affect any of those statistics in a big way unless you fix how we care for the most elderly and the most vulnerable in our society.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but libertarians hate democracy. Free market libertarians hate democracy. Like Rothbardians hate democracy and Hayekians hate democracy because under a market fundamentalist, like anarcho-capitalist worldview, they hate democracy because it distributes resources based on popular support and not by a market mechanism. That's why they hate democracy. They think that it undermines the market distribution of resources by distributing resources in another fashion. It's an impediment to the market. Because leftist libertarians, we love democracy. Like libertarians on the left, we absolutely love it. But like anarcho-capitalists, they do not like democracy undermining market distributions.
Social care. And in 2019, Boris Johnson said, you can't fix the NHS without fixing social care. He proclaimed that outside Downing Street. There's his quote. Before that, Theresa May promised that in 2017. Go back further in time, David Cameron and George Osborne used to promise that. That was a big problem that successive Conservative Prime Ministers, we've had plenty of them, promised to fix and have not. Will there be a plan to fix social care in your manifesto this time round?
We already have a 10-year plan to improve and to provide the social care that we want our grandparents, our parents to have. We have invested in that. We are beginning to see, so for example, with Yvette earlier, you were talking about immigration levels. In fact, what we've seen is a small, and I accept that, but a small increase in the number of the social care members of the social care workforce because they are critical to delivering this care. And what is more, we have wanted to professionalise that really important occupation. And so through our recruitment and our retention work with the social care workforce, that is one of the ways in which we will drive real improvements.
But you know, Victoria Atkins, that time after time after time, the major reform of social care has been delayed again and again and again by success.
I mean, because it keeps being a political hot button issue. I mean, really and truly, when they tried to do reforms, it was called the dementia tax. It got attacked as the death tax, even in the 90s. In like the 92 election, it was attacked as being a death tax, for example. Whereas the National Care Service is the ideal policy to run on to be able to fix social care because it buys people in.
Successive Conservative governments. Do you accept, hand on heart, that that is a failure of the last 14 years?
So I would say it goes further back than that, if we're being frank as well. But we have had 14 years. We have seen already through the work that we've done with the Better Care Fund, we have seen the construction of what are called integrated care boards. A bit of jargon, but what it means is it's bringing healthcare and social care together, and through them we are seeing much more join up with older patients being released from A&E.
Yeah, we've all seen the tweet, George. Yeah, it is quite funny, to be honest, but I'm still absolutely mad for her because, yeah, she doesn't deserve this shit.
into the appropriate care setting.
Well, there's
through
12.
hospital discharges.
Well, we checked the numbers on this. There are 12,000 people stuck in hospital who couldn't be discharged because they can't be sent home because the help they need isn't there. That figure has stayed stubbornly at around about that level for a long, long time. So I ask you again, do you accept, hand on heart, now I think you're a pretty candid politician, that actually, after 14 years in charge, not tackling the social care system has been a failure?
May I just pick you up on the 12,000 point, because that's everybody in hospital. So I very much appreciate that some of them will be older patients needing specialist or as appropriate care, but there are other occasions.
I don't know what my knowledge of Welsh politics is like, but do I think Vaughan Gething will win his no confidence vote in the National Assembly? He needs just one person from the crossbench to support him, to give him confidence to win the vote, right? Because if I remember correctly, Labour's minority government in the Senate is 1 seat away from a majority. So if one person abstains on the vote, or if one person from the crossbench votes in favour of Gething, he wins his confidence vote. I think that's what that's my understanding of it. It may be wrong. Again, I'm not hot on Welsh politics. Now the boomers are old, will they now vote for a social care system funded by younger voters' taxes? But again, we just tax the rich to fund it.
Occasions, for example, people living with mental health illness, people who need a bit of help just to get home, but they don't need a social care package.
But
so there's a whole range of
12,000
reasons.
people
Believe
stuck
you
in
me,
hospital.
I examine every single trust week in, week out with
And
the
it's
chief
3
executive
times
of
as many
NHS
as it was
England.
in 2010. 3 times.
And again, that demonstrates the change in society that we are trying to respond to through, as I say, a range of measures, not just in relation to social care.
I mean, I don't think that, posting a picture of a canvasser where you can't see their face, I think that's fine, Georgia. I mean, maybe it's like in slightly poor taste. I'm not really that bothered about it. At the end of the day, like, if you're canvassing for like a parachuted candidate, like, you're an embarrassing person anyway. Like, but maybe it is in poor taste, George. I get it, but
through the announcements we've made today, we're also constructing 50 new community diagnostic centres on top of the 160 that we've rolled out quite quietly. We've had the biggest investment in MRI and CT scanners in the history of the NHS through this. And what that means is people will get diagnosed more quickly and treated more quickly. And you asked for evidence. We know that these centres have produced some 7 million more tests, scans and checks, which helps people get that treatment more quickly.
What about the 40 new hospitals that Boris Johnson promised? Because we've checked the numbers on that. Only the National Audit Office said only 11 of them would be deemed as technically being new hospitals, and only a handful of them have opened. So why would people believe your promises now when that huge promise that Boris Johnson used to get the crowd to chant, that has not been kept?
So that promise was made in 2019.
yes, and then the pandemic happened and it justified a big investment in the health service, which you didn't do. Again, he was trying to make up for the failures of the Osborne and Cameron administration for absolutely scrapping and taking huge amounts of money out of the capital expenditure budget from the NHS and giving austerity in the day-to-day budgets too. Like, again, like there was all of this justification for NHS investment. You've not fucking done it. You were too busy giving contracts to Michelle Mone for PPE.
The pandemic hit us pretty much immediately afterwards. Clearly, both the NHS and the construction industry were affected by that. But as soon as we were able to, we got building again. We have 6 new hospitals open to patients today. We have 2 more opening by the end of the year, and we have 18 currently in construction. But Labour will stop all construction projects, all capital projects. They've promised it in their health.
What about consultant radiologists like Dr. Alan Statham? Sorry, when I say radiologist, all I can think of is Dr. Alan Statham. I'm really sorry, Proton Bobs. You're making a really interesting, serious point, and I'm talking about Channel 4 sitcoms, but it's just the only thing that comes into my like, no thoughts, head empty, really.
Mission. So if there is a CDC in Corby, if there is a new hospital being built in Whipps Cross, I want to get the diggers in the ground within weeks. Labour is going to stop it.
OK, well, we've already talked to Labour in the programme, but just before we close, I do want to ask you, I don't know if you heard, but we asked Vic Cooper that very specific promise to bereaved parents that they would be able to access their children's social media accounts. That was dropped during the wash-up period. The law didn't make it through when the election was called. If you win, would you commit to bringing that back as soon as possible for those families?
So I have enormous sympathy for those families. We have to make decisions by collective responsibility. If it was my decision alone, it would be a big yes, but let's wait and see what the manifesto says.
OK, Victoria Atkins, thank you very much for coming in.
That was nothing. They said nothing. They literally just, NHS is bad. We're going to do things. We've not done them yet. No, we've not done them yet. Pandemic happened. You like what's the fucking point? Didn't I learn anything there? Main problem is it looks really bad from an outside perspective. Lots of people doing the "I had some sympathy but not anymore" line. I guess, yeah.
With us in the studio. Thank you. Well, as ever, let us know what you think. Email us, coonspark@bbc.co.uk, or if you're social media inclined, you can get on the hashtag #BBCLauraK, and we will try and share some of your conversation later on in the show. Well then, let's go to our panel. Andy, let's start with you. What did you make of Victoria Atkins' answers on the NHS? It's so important to voters.
I think what I made of it is that you showed a graph. No one's arguing about that. There's another graph, though. And that's the amount of investment that this government has put in. And that would show a huge piece. So there's a real deep issue here. And the only way that we're going to get the outcomes we need for people, understand, people say, you said people are frustrated. The government say they're investing hugely. They've invested in more doctors, nurses. That is true. Is actually looking at the total system. And this piece about diagnostics in the community, particularly the toughest parts of the community, and that investment in primary care, to me, that is part of the solution to this, which we've spoken insufficiently about.
Daisy, what did you make? What she had to say? I know the Lib Dems are making...
It's interesting they've managed to get 3 people from the left of their respective parties on. Like, Andy Street is basically not a Tory at this point, basically just like a Liberal Democrat with a blue tie. Shami Chakrabarti is from like the Corbynite wing of the party, and Daisy Cooper is definitely on the left of the Lib Dems. So it's weird, like the contrast between the 2 people on the right of the Tory and Labour parties they interviewed, and also Tory Koensberg as well.
Making their own announcement about health today.
Honestly, I think she's defending the indefensible. The Conservatives promised to recruit 6,000 GPs and they haven't. They promised to build 40 new hospitals and they haven't. They're talking about pharmacy first, but 700 pharmacies have closed since 2015. The reality is that the Conservatives have completely gutted public health and primary care. And as a result, much of the money that they're spending is on firefighting with people stuck in A&E because they couldn't get the treatment when they needed it. That's one of the reasons why we are announcing today that we would reverse those savage Conservative cuts to public health budgets by investing £1 billion a year to get that spending up to 2015 levels in real terms.
Where would that money come from, though? Because it's easy to say. Everybody always says, yes, it's lovely to spend money on health in the community, and that's what makes a difference. But where do you get the cash from?
Well, this particular pledge would be funded by cracking down on tax avoidance. We know that...
Every political party always says that, and the returns are not always what they hope for.
Well, we'll have a fully costed manifesto, but the Conservatives...
Use your Brexit bonus. Use your... No, what was it? The Remain bonus. Use the Remain dividend that they said they were going to get in the 2019 manifesto that was going to literally pay for all of their policies. That's a fun one. They calculated, I think it was £60 billion worth of free money they were going to get by reversing Brexit into their fully costed manifesto, quote unquote, in 2019, which I think is very funny.
themselves have said they think they could raise £6 billion from cracking down on tax avoidance. So the question does arise why they haven't done it already.
OK, well, Shami, listening to Yvette Cooper on migration,
again,
you know, Labour...
like, not even the Lib Dems will touch like the wealth tax at this point. Like, if you want to tax the rich, the only party is the Green Party.
is trying to talk tough on immigration. We've heard it before. Are you...
We literally have explicit legislation. It was passed by David fucking Cameron, of all people. We have explicit legislation available that was passed by the Tories to be able to deliberately try and hunt down people who avoid tax. HMRC have these powers. How many times have these been used? Like, for people within companies. How many times have these powers been used? Literally 0 times. They've never, ever, ever been used. And it was the Tory government who made these policies, and they've just not used them as an ability to crack down on tax avoidance. It's pathetic.
You relaxed about the tone from them, and also is it coherent to voters to say you want to bring migration down, but then not go anywhere near even giving a vague number or a vague sense of the kind of proportion of the kind of change they want to see?
I think Yvette was right to not take your bait on the this number, that number.
Know.
Well, I think what they want to know is that we will prioritise training up and paying social care workers from this country. I fully support that, rather than bringing in cheap labour and draining.
Yeah, true. Austerity gutted the government services, including HMRC. Like, the people who were there who need the money to be able to process these things, to deal with the tax avoidance, they don't have enough money. The people who are supposed to process the asylum claims that have this massive backlog, we're spending all this money on hotels, for example. That's a result of the fact that austerity cut the budgets for people doing the asylum claims, which is why the waiting list massively increased under Tories rather than when it was at least being funded under the Brown and Blair administrations. Like, just literally, like, all of these problems been created because of David fucking Cameron and George Osborne destroying the country from the inside with their Lib Dem accomplices.
Potential human resources from other countries. That is a principle that I can get behind, and it's not nasty and it's not illegal like the Rwanda plan. I think it makes sense, and it's the link. It's actually the link to your two interviews, the social care piece, the social care time bomb deficit. I know so many middle-aged friends of mine, about my age, who are having to deal with their older parents who are not being looked after in the community. And such social care as we have is too privatised and too profiteered.
And it's a huge issue for many families, but it might not be a huge issue in this election campaign, even though we know many of you at home have huge issues with this. But we will keep asking the questions. Of course, our interviews this morning come after a frantic few days of campaigning. Let's consider who won the week.
Yeah, like, speaking of spending money to put into HMRC to crack down on tax avoidance to be able to have a higher tax base, they did that in America. Like, the Biden administration put loads of extra money into the IRS, and all of the Republicans got fucking mad as they were just like, oh, they're going to tax me more. And I'm like, yeah, if you've been avoiding your fucking taxes, yeah, we'll make you pay your taxes. Like, it's not a difficult, like, proposition, but these people think they should get away with anything.
Well, first of all, for Labour has been dominated by the Diane Abbott saga. For days, it stopped Labour from concentrating on making headlines on the announcements that they chose. And Keir Starmer didn't really want to talk about it when he was busy launching his battle bus alongside Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves. Rishi Sunak's bus is also on the move around the country, but there's an interesting difference. He tends to appear on his own, different kind of looking campaign.
Quick question, chat. Does anybody know anything that Rishi Sunak's done this week? Has anybody seen anything? Has Rishi Sunak announced a policy? Like, he announced, like, the quadruple lock and national service, but for, like, the last 4 days, the Tories, I've just not seen any Tory. I've not seen any Tory do anything. Like, what's going on? What's going on in the Tory? Well, where's the campaign, guys? Have they just already given up? I mean, like, fair. If they have given up, good. Like, I'm glad, you know, fuck off forever. Don't give a shit about you, right? But you thought they would at least try. Yeah, all I saw was literally all I saw was him being asked why he hates young people and saying my mum died of COVID while you partied. Yeah. Points, you know, like driver license for fly tipping, average Tory policy.
And John Swinney, the SNP leader, has been out and about taking aim at Labour's plans for energy. But I've got to say, it is Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, who looks at least like he has been having the most fun. Now, all three of you, I do want to ask you all.
Honestly, again, like, you know, big up Ed Davey for treating this election with the fucking seriousness it deserves.
Individually, who won the week? Andy, who do you think had the best and the worst week?
So two people had a good week. Angela Rayner, because she called it before her boss, and that was brave. And then, of course, I actually think Jeremy Hunt had a very good week as well, because there's a very important point behind what's happening. He is actually setting the tax and spend agenda, and Labour are responding. And that is not a good position for the Labour Party to be in.
Shami, who won the week?
What's that? The Conservative Party setting the agenda and the narrative, and Labour beep-booping along, following on like an automaton that doesn't know how to make its own points or have its own ideology or its own beliefs or anything, and just goes, tax and spend bad. We want to cut taxes for everybody and create wealth and become the Tories, but with a different name because we don't know how to be able to oppose properly. We'll just take all of their beliefs as read, but say we'll do it better and be better at managing it. Like, it's pathetic, it really is. But Andy Street is right, it's bad for Labour. If they can't set the narrative, it allows the Tories to be the only people who set policy. Yeah, John Swinney is a charisma vacuum, it's true.
They're having a discourse.
Well, we're still 21 points potentially ahead, but I'm told. But I would say maybe Common Decency and Diane Abbott.
Daisy, who won the week? Isn't there a risk that your leader looks a bit daft doing all these antics?
No, hands down, Ed Davey has won the week. Not only has he been having a lot of fun, but all of those stunts are designed to deliver a message. And so when he was falling into Lake Windermere, he was obviously delivering our message about how we've led the campaign to tackle raw sewage dumping. When he was at the water park, he was raising awareness of our pledge to have a mental health practitioner in every single primary and secondary school. So we take our politics very seriously.
Yeah, how about fixing some material conditions, Liberals? Why not, instead of just like papering over the cracks of the problems in mental health, why don't you deal with the material conditions that have created the mental health crisis in the first place? Oh, we can't do that though, that's scary Marxism. And on top of that, like, what's your plan for dealing with the sewage dumpers? If it's not nationalise them without compensation and throw the bosses into fucking jail, like, I don't give a shit what you're doing. I don't care what your plan is if it's not that specifically. But I think Brad Mummer will win the leadership post-election if she's still got her seat, potentially. It depends which Tories stick around. You've got to remember, it's going to be the Parliamentary Conservative Party who get to pick who the next leader is and then get voted on by the membership. So, like, there could be a position where it's only, like, One Nation Tories that are left, or it could just be that the only people they've got left are, like, the people like Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman, who are probably pretty safe at this point. There's still a chance they might go, but it's pretty safe. Like, it might just be, yeah, it really does depend on which members of the Parliamentary Conservative Party are left. Have they explicitly been talking about jailing water bosses and massive fines? Okay, well, maybe their plan is good then, okay. Touché, Stratic Fox. I appreciate the correction.
But we also think that we don't have to take ourselves that seriously.
Well, if they wanted to try to get the pictures on television in the papers, you have certainly managed to do that. Andy, let's talk a bit then about your decision this week not to stand as an MP and really what's happened since you lost the mayoralty. It was a big loss for the Conservatives, a very tight race back in the local elections. When you announced you wouldn't run as an MP, you intriguingly said this week that you would fight for inclusive and moderate conservatism. Now, the implication of that is that you're a bit worried that the party's taken a wrong turn. Is that right?
No, that's all premature, actually. What we're trying to do in that statement, what I'm trying to do in that statement is think, hang on a minute, how was it so close in the West Midlands? You said that. Yes, I lost, and many people would say you shouldn't even be here as someone who lost. But I think there's a lesson in what happened. We got within 1,500 votes of Labour at a time where the Conservative Party's got some challenging polls, as we've heard, in a place that's historically been a Labour heartland. But we got so close. And how was that? It was because of the brand of conservatism that we followed. It was about an agenda which was about delivery, getting stuff done. It wasn't particularly philosophical. It was about responding to all communities, holding a broad church together, but the leadership absolutely in the middle ground, about economic competence and thinking then about how you support those people through. So my message to my party is...
Imagine a party being a broad church. Imagine wanting to welcome in both sides of a party. I don't know what that's like, chat. I have no idea what that's like.
Even in our loss, and this is why the moment was important to say it, because that's when you have the most focus, that there is actually a message about how the Conservative Party can win, where it needs to be centred.
And it's a warning, though, isn't it? I mean, you're saying...
Of course it is.
It is.
Yeah, of course it is. Whether we win or lose the general election, the point is simple, that you have to have that broad church, have to be centred in the middle ground. And if you abandon that, and the lesson of history is so clear here, if you go back 100 years, all the big turning points in British political history, the winners have come from the centre ground. And that is my message to my party.
And do you think that your party is at one of those turning points?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If you look, as I've said many times, if you look at the composition of the current government, many of the most senior people in the government are from that centre ground. But who knows what the composition might be and the temptation might be. And the papers are full of all this, I will describe it as nonsense this morning, that Nigel Farage may be amongst the leaders of the Conservative Party in the future. That is not a moderate, inclusive Conservative Party with a broad appeal. And that's why it is appropriate that we think about this well before we know the outcome of any general election.
One of the other things, though, that might have contributed to you losing by a whisker...
Yeah, Liberals love compromise with racists, but never the left, literally true.
Was Rishi Sunak's decision not to proceed in full with plans for the high-speed rail. Now, you made no secret at the time. Maybe I think sometimes you were trying to be polite through gritted teeth, but you were pretty...
Boris Johnson won after locking out Remainer Tories. That wasn't a broad church strategy. I mean, that's true. That is true. But then again, I think that Brexit is different because that was about a democratic vote that the people took, right? That was about people were undermining the idea that they were trying to put forward at least some kind of deal that delivered on the democratic results of the referendum. It's not like an internal party factional dispute over what direction that they want to put to the people is. The people had already decided that Brexit was a thing that was going to happen, and people wanted to undo that, and so they had the whip withdrawn. Rightly or wrongly, you can take your decision on that. But that's different from saying, well, you believe the wrong kind of conservatism or the wrong kind of socialism, or you're not one of these things, therefore we'll expel you. Outside of I think it's slightly different. But I get your point. I think as soon as they lose, they'll campaign for PIM.
Cross about that. How much do you think it contributed to you losing?
I don't think it did, actually. I don't think it did. I'm not dodging the question. I was cross. I don't agree with it. We worked hard to find with Andy Burnham an alternative, and I would say to both parties, interestingly, after the general election, go back to that alternative, which is now with the Department of Transport, to find better connectivity between the West Midlands and Greater Manchester. It needs to happen for all sorts of reasons, but I don't actually believe it was the issue on people's minds when it came to voting in the West Midlands.
And lots of people in the Tory party, and maybe lots of our viewers, wanted you to run as an MP. They didn't want it to be it for you in politics. Why did you decide not to?
So I think, again, there's an important point about the makeup of politics here. We're talking to so many people at the moment who aspire to be MPs, and I have huge respect for that job. It's a critical job, so please don't take that wrongly. But it's not necessarily right for everyone who wants to contribute to political leadership. When the role of the mayor was set up, Michael Heseltine, George Osborne, they talked about
He does look like the Wealdstone Raider, it's true.
Drawing different people in, people from business. And that was why it was a perfect job for me. I, as someone who's been in business for many years, am naturally an executive. Perhaps an MP job is not necessarily right for me. And I certainly enjoyed the freedom and the authority to act that being an executive mayor allowed. So that's the sort of thing that must be cherished.
OK, well, it's great to have you here this morning with sharing your freedom and authority. Thanks for talking about what happened. Well, the reason, as you all know, is this all matters so much is that in 32 days, we'll all have the chance to cast our ballot and choose who runs the country. But has all the frantic activity done much to change your minds so far? Here is the nation's favourite number cruncher, Sir John Curtis. With his take on the polls, it's 60 seconds on Sunday.
A dozen companies have conducted polls since Mr Sunak fired this starting gun 10 days ago. But apart from Labour, up just half a point, the changes in support for all the parties average out at 0. Labour are still 21 points ahead of the Conservatives, though the lead does vary between 12 and 27 points. One key figure in the polls is that people who voted Tory in 2019 are 3 times more likely than Labour voters to be undecided. One reason for the different poll leads is that some pollsters anticipate many of these Tory voters will eventually back Rishi Sunak. Others don't.
The thing is, though, even the pollsters that do believe that have polls with gigantic Labour leads. Again, Opinion as a pollster automatically includes electoral tightening into their polling framework, and they are still predicting a 20-point victory for Labour, even after the don't-knows side with the Tories. That's why the Opinion, head of polling, literally tweeted it out with the phrase, literally tweeted out a teaser before it was released saying Jesus wept, because they know that it's going to be an absolute wipeout.
But Mr Sunak also needs to win back the many voters lost to Reform, whose 11% vote is holding up. The Democrat vote is also holding steady at 9%. The Greens are at a record 5%, potentially to Labour's disadvantage. But it's not clear whether they will win any seats.
Well, as John was saying, there was a big chance for the small parties this time. The Greens in England and Wales say their main job is to push Labour to be bolder on housing and climate change. There they are, kicking off their campaign in Bristol, where they're trying to knock out a Labour seat. And Adrian Ramsey, who you can see in those shots there, is with us here in the studio. Welcome to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, the difference, which is really interesting with the Greens, is that you're the only party that is saying you don't necessarily believe the economy should grow. You say we should eat less, consume less. Do you think that that is a message that voters are ready to hear?
Well, we've got a strong message about the sort of economy we want to see. We want to see investment in a transition to a greener economy, which will have all sorts of job opportunity, insulating our homes in ways that bring people's bills down and keep homes warm. And we also want to have a far fairer economy as well. And we're the only party being honest in this election that if we're going to tackle the crisis in our NHS, the dental desert that we have, the fact that our hospitals have patients in the corridors, people can't get the procedures that they want and need, then we're going to to have to ask the very richest in society, the multimillionaires, the billionaires, to pay modestly more in tax in a way that would raise tens of billions that enable us to invest in our health service. And so we want to have a fairer society, and we're talking about the type of economy that we want to see.
But the important distinction.
And the thing is, again, is those are all pro-growth policies. Investment is a pro-growth policy. I mean, I guess ensuring that we consume less energy, I guess, is not necessarily a supply-side policy. It reduces demand, but at least it makes our bills cheaper. It means we spend less on using energy and we can spend our consumption elsewhere. I mean, investment in things like new green industry, that is pro-growth policy. Wanting to tax the rich to redistribute to people so they can consume more is still pro-growth. That's not an anti-growth or a degrowth platform.
Behind all of that is that you don't believe, as the others do, that the economy should just keep growing. It should always be bigger. That is a very important principle that you hold, isn't it?
The principle for Greens is that just using GDP as a measure of economic success is a blunt instrument. It doesn't tell us about how unequal our society is, whether our children have clean air to breathe, whether our rivers are full of sewage, whether our public services are working properly, whether people can get access to an NHS dentist. We need to have a wider range of economic measures which are about health and happiness, prosperity, jobs, public services, not just one blunt measure about the amount of activity in the economy.
But your policy.
That's a really, really, really great point. George Monbiot said the same thing on BBC Politics Live. And Unlearning Economics did a really great video, the very first Unlearning Economics video, specifically talking about the failure of GDP as a measure. Because all it does is tell you how much activity is going on in the economy. It doesn't tell you about how happy people are, how prosperous people are, whether the economy has got well-distributed resources. It doesn't tell you about the broader societal utility of the economy that you've created. All it is big number go up equals world more gooder, which isn't a good metric. Again, right, there's this funny joke where two economists are walking down the street. One of them pays one of them £50 to eat dog poo. The other one pays the other person £50 to eat dog poo. And then they go like, well, hang on a minute. Both of us have just eaten dog poo and we've both got no money. And the other one says to the other, yeah, but we did just increase GDP by £100. And that's because it's a silly metric to use just as a singular figure, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't ignore GDP altogether, but as he says, it's not a blunt instrument. It should be one specific measure that we use amongst a load of other different measures in terms of the health of our society. Again, because it's a very kind of market logic, market fundamentalist, neoliberal worldview to constrain everything down to a few numbers on a graph in terms of your macroeconomic health of your economy and take that to be the only metric that you use. And again, really worth watching the Economic Narratives video that was done during the coronavirus pandemic by Unlearning Economics that explains this further.
Policy document also says the population of the UK is consuming more than its fair share. And you cite food and farming, as most people would agree, as big sources of harmful emissions. And your document then says the Green Party will use rationing to reduce the amounts of meat and dairy consumed in the UK. So how much less milk would you want people to drink? And should people watching at home put down their bacon sandwiches right now?
Well, we haven't yet produced our manifesto for the next 5 years, and when we put that out in the next...
But this is in your policy platform. It's available on the website, and we've looked at it carefully. It says the Green Party will therefore use rationing to reduce the amounts of meat and dairy food.
I don't think rationing is going to be in our manifesto for the next 5 years. In fact, I'm certain it's not going to be. What we're going to be putting forward is how we make our food system more resilient, and we're living at a time when we see food prices and fuel prices going up and up. We're really in a vulnerable situation in the UK because we're not...
It's really funny how they managed to pick out one line in a large democratic policy prospectus on the Greens website to be able to find one thing that makes them look like the climate loonies. To be fair, I think it's a silly policy and I disagree with it, for example. But they couldn't do any basic scrutiny of, say, for example, Labour's plan on GB Energy from any of the policy documentation to try and piece apart the fact that it wasn't an energy company. Like, they can't do due diligence on the two major parties. As soon as a small party comes along, oh no, we found this one thing on your website that makes you look silly, and we're going to broadcast it like that's your only policy prospectus. That's really, really silly. But, I mean, it's right that we need to be more sustainable in the way that we consume food. I think rationing is a silly policy, and we need to look rather at excise duty to be able to change and direct people's consumption habits to make sure it's more sustainable. But, again, like, why are we not talking about wealth taxes? Why are we not talking about the fact they want to nationalise the water companies during the sewage crisis? Why are we not talking about green investment in building new jobs for people through the green energy funds that we are championing within the Green Party? Why are we not talking about any of this? They've just picked out one random line, again, from a policy perspective that's voted on by members, not necessarily the manifesto for the next election, which isn't even going to be party bloody policy. That's so silly. Like, why don't we talk about the rent controls, the council houses, like the big actual, like, marquee policies that we're being talked about here, and we're getting diverted by silly nonsense that's not even real policy.
Not producing anywhere near enough of our food at home. And the farmers I speak to in Suffolk and Norfolk all the time say to me that there's far more that the government could be doing to support our farmers, to produce far more of our food locally, to improve the grants that are available for nature-friendly farming, where farmers tell me that there's nowhere near enough money in that pot, it's too difficult to access. So if we work with our farmers, we can produce far more of our food locally, we'll be far more resilient to a changing climate, to international political affairs, which, as we've seen with the war in Ukraine, can shoot these prices up. And so Greens are alone in recognising we need a far more resilient approach to farming, to energy, to the way we run our economy. And that's the vision we're setting out.
And you have candidates standing around the country on that platform. There have been a number of...
That's a good response, actually. It's a good response to say, well, no, actually, no, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the real problems that are happening now. And I think that was a really good answer, although I think that most of viewers who are watching this will have already switched off and turned off from what was originally said by Laura Koonsberg. And, like, it's just what happens when you have a Democratic Party platform, unfortunately, sometimes.
Of allegations of anti-Semitic comments made by some of your people who are standing to be MPs, including...
Was there? Has there actually been genuine anti-Semitic comments? I'd like to hear them.
One who recently promoted a conspiracy theory that Israel had conspired to allow the October the 7th attacks to take place when more than 1,000 people were killed and many taken hostage.
Well, that's similar to what Azhar Ali said. Again, like, I will always say, and I've said before, like, the reason why October the 7th was allowed to happen is because Likud were focusing too much on throwing all the IDF's forces into the West Bank to do incursions into Jenin, Nablus and all of those places. Like, and Al-Aqsa, like, literally going into Al-Aqsa with tear gas and shit. And they left Gaza alone. They took their eye off the ball on Gaza, and that's why the invasion happened. But to try and say that they deliberately did it, they deliberately let their guard down so that the things would happen to be able to justify an invasion of Gaza. Now, that isn't true. That is, like, puppet master, anti-Semitic conspiracy theory stuff. But again, I've not seen the quote that's been referenced here, so...
Hostages. Should someone who stated that be allowed to stand as an MP?
No, they shouldn't. And the Green Party takes any suggestions of anti-Semitism or indeed any form of racism very seriously, and any suggestions that have been made of inappropriate comments in recent weeks are being investigated by the relevant people in the party. That has to be separate from the party leadership, is a clear message of good governance.
So will you be...
Have you seen, like, immediately a left-wing party has a big base of people, more than they had previously. Oh, someone pressed the anti-Semitism button. Let's go. And again, this is one case throughout the entire party that's being seized upon as being this evidence of institutional anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. Like, the comments, the anti-Semitic comments that Keir Livingston made were done in, like, 2016, before anybody had any problems with Labour's inherent anti-Semitism problems. It was only in 2017, when they were doing better than people realised, that it then became seized upon by the mainstream media. And this is what's happening now with the Greens. Again, if this is a genuine comment that's been made, I think that they should absolutely be struck off as a parliamentary candidate. But, of course, I don't know what the accusation is being made here.
Barring candidates then, I mean, there are at least 3 examples that have been reported on about people who want to be Green MPs, who want to be standing, saying things on social media or liking posts on social media. One of them said Israel must be eliminated, for example. Will those people be off your list?
That's not anti-Semitic. Yes, Israel should be dismantled and should be replaced with a single secular democracy, which is multi-ethnic, multi-racial, and there is dual control over the Holy Esplanade. Like, the dissolution of the State of Israel is not an anti-Semitic position to take. It's not even one I am set on. Like, I will happily take a 2-state solution as well, but to call the one-state solution anti-Semitic is complete nonsense.
So in the last couple of weeks, there were 3 candidates who had been selected who are no longer going forward. I understand there's a small number more who are still being looked at. And for the first time, the Green Party is planning to stand candidates right across England and Wales. That's 570 seats. You've referred to a small number of examples here. But in terms of those seats where we've got a fantastic chance of winning at this election, seats like Bristol Central, Waveney Valley, North Herefordshire, Brighton Pavilion, we plan to get at least 4 Green MPs elected to push the new government to be bolder, because rather than Labour's timid promises on public services and climate, if this new government is going to take the action that's needed, we need green...
Well, no, you can't talk about your actual policies. You can't talk about the real policy platforms that's actually going to be in your manifesto, rather than random quotes from the prospectus on the website, or indeed things that's been said by some people that people are trying to pretend is anti-Semitic, right? No, you can't talk about policy. We've got to talk about this completely inane and useless shit that doesn't matter. Brilliant. Thank you, Laura Koonsberg. Appreciate you. Appreciate your fair and balanced reporting. Zero bias here whatsoever. You should answer and say the Green Party is against any expansionist state that treats ecocide with less respect than genocide. Well, yeah, literally. The Greens will never get a fair hearing. Anyone to the left of Salazar can talk about nothing but how much they love Israel. Literally true. Literally true.
Voices in Parliament to push them to take the real hope and real change that this country needs.
OK, well, of course, we don't know who that new government will be, but interesting that you're focusing your sights on Labour. But Adrian, thank you very much indeed for coming in. It's
yeah, interesting that they're focusing their sights on the party that's definitely going to win, and is where they straddle their voter base with. Like, what a crazy idea that the Green Party might want to win votes off their ideological, like, brethren, I guess, in terms of those on the left. What a strange idea, Laura. Yeah, true. Settlers burn olive trees, absolutely. The Ken Livingstone comments I'm talking about is the one where he said that Zionists conspired with Hitler, which is just like basic, complete nonsense. Why are political parties scrutinised so hard for having levels of anti-Semitism lower than that of the general population? Yeah, it's stupid, innit? You're on the left, you're anti-Israel, therefore you must be anti-Semite. But yeah, well, will she talk about how Luke Akehurst said that Jewish people are fucking black? Like, will she do that? Will she mention that? Yeah, will she fuck? Actually, I'm going to investigate this comment that was made. Green Party candidate, Israel... October 7th. Let me see what the actual quote was. I think this is the one. Green Party MP candidate suggested Israel paid Hamas to attack on October the 7th. That's not a sentence. To do the attack? Or they paid it, they gave them money and they used it for that? Because the Likud did help facilitate money going through to Hamas via Qatar. Like, that's literally a fucking fact. A Green Party parliamentary candidate suggests the Israeli government might have paid Hamas to commit October 7th so they could build a canal through Gaza. One comparing Israel to the Nazis, like, it's against the IHRA definition, but I think the blood and soil shit is pretty similar to me. So actually, it isn't what I said. Okay. So Joe Belcher said on X last November, why Palestinian terror leaders would have sold their people down the river by attacking Israel. Why would Hamas commandos order October 7th to then have their territory destroyed and their people killed or displaced from Gaza? For money? If so, who offered them this money? The Israeli government ? It's certainly convenient now that Israel can attempt to justify wiping out Palestinians from Gaza and to claim Gaza as Israel. Why would they do that? To claim rights over the oil and gas reserves in Gazan waters and to clear the way to create the Ben Gurion Canal through Gaza. Now, these are all plans that Israeli right-wingers have talked about, but that's not just, but again, this is no evidence that they deliberately, like, try to facilitate it by giving Hamas money. That's fucking nonsense. Although, to be fair, again, like, to try and say that Israel, that Likud specifically, facilitated money going to Hamas via Qatar, not being paid by Israel, just helping facilitate it coming from elsewhere, for example. This is something that they did do, and this is to divide the PLO and the Palestinian Authority from Hamas and Gaza in the Gaza Strip. That's the explicit reason why Israel, or the Likud rather, helped funnel money to Hamas, to divide them. And of course, Hamas being militant, so they're happy to have in power, justifies the continual military occupation and military presence, which is their way of being able to creep through to steal, to try and take as much land as possible. But remember, the Likud party believe in Greater Israel, which is the entirety of Palestine and the entirety of Transjordan. Like, as per what they believe that they were told that they would get from their agreement in the 1920s. But I think that just this Israel paid for October the 7th bullshit, yeah, that's enough to get him removed as a candidate. I think that's fair enough. My hunch is that October 7th was paid for by Netanyahu or the West. Yeah, well, exactly, like... I mean, I guess... Again, he helped facilitate it, but no money came from them. So I think that's enough to get removed as a candidate. I think that's fair enough. Earlier this month, Nassim Talukdar was dumped by the party after an internal investigation into social media posts. The Bristol East candidate had circulated photographs comparing Netanyahu to Hitler. Yeah, like, whatever. Man's a monster. David Miller has literally got, like, protection for his anti-Zionist views by law. Yeah, blood libel shit coming from this person. That's not good. I mean, the Chingford and Wood Green candidate has said that 9/11 and October 7th were false flag operations. Literally a fucking 9/11 truther. Probably worth replacing that person with Pfizer Shaheen. I don't know much about David Miller. All I know is that he won a court case protecting his views from anti-Zionism under the Equality Act. Yeah, there's definitely. There's definitely been investigations into allowing the oil and gas reserves in the Gazan waters. Well, literally, the fact that somebody's being investigated for saying Allahu Akbar is fucking crazy. I mean, I hope that Akehurst fucking loses. I don't know if people saw. It was very funny. Okay, Martin. Cheers. I appreciate you. So this is Luke Akehurst's campaign and how it's going. Labour Party members exiting the meeting with Luke Akehurst right now, furious that he refused to answer any questions or allow any Q&A session. Labour Party members, including a councillor, exiting the North Durham CLP meeting furious, some highlighting they weren't informed about Luke Akehurst's candidacy until later on Thursday, and they found out via social media. They report that they had 3 local candidates ready to run for selection in this constituency, a lot of tension here regarding the imposition of this candidate. Protesters have now blockaded Luke Akehurst's car outside of the community centre in North Durham. A few supporters of Akehurst, around 4 or 5, have started threatening protesters. So fucking funny. Police have now arrived and Luke Akehurst is now on his way elsewhere. Tension's extremely high here, especially among protesters, local residents and some Labour Party members furious that Akehurst wouldn't answer any questions or face any scrutiny. Now, that's not the only funny thing that's been happening with regards to Luke Akehurst. Apparently, chat. So this is inside his campaign launch where he can barely get people together. Apparently on the doorsteps there are only 3 people who were happy to canvass with him. There's now footage of appears to be Luke's wife assaulting people. I mean, allegedly assaulting people at this point. Again, I've not seen these clips, so I can't confirm nor deny that. One of the more amusing things is that Luke Akehurst's protest was that one of his organisers had to take a stack of placards for him back because very few members would put them up in their houses. That's fucking hilarious. I've seen people ask what the local community reaction to Luke Akehurst being the Labour candidate imposed on North Durham has been. I think it's important to showcase the views of people who aren't necessarily politically involved or members of political parties. So here are a few posts from the community group, Chest to the Street, have your say. What's the crack with this Labour candidate they're shoving into Kevin Jones's place? I know Kevin wants to take some time out and I wholeheartedly thank him. He's got who's this fella? He's got nothing to do with that area and sounds like a career politician they're shoving into a safe Labour seat so he can prop up Starmer's pseudo-Tory regime. Please prove me wrong, but I can't imagine he'd be putting in hours to chase up the problems of Sacriston and Chester like Kevin did. Galling thing is I'll have to vote for him as they can't afford to split the vote and let the Tories slide in. Vote Green, mate. Vote for an independent candidate. Vile piece of work. True. That's very funny. Cheers, Commie Tom. It's true, that's the Trots. The Trots getting involved, isn't it? A Luke Akehurst campaign launcher, pro-Palestine actress, was assaulted. The far-right supporters of Akehurst not happy with the people of North Durham do not want somebody with his views representing them. I mean, that doesn't look great. One of the Labour councillors who's supporting Luke Akehurst engaged in a friendly manner with some of the thugs who threatened pro-Palestinian demonstrators. There's video footage, apparently. A crowdfunder open to put together fighting fund to oppose Luke Akehurst in his candidacy for Durham. This will either take the form of running a viable independent or putting out messaging informing voters of Luke Akehurst's background. Apparently skinheads and fascists came along to threaten those protesting against Akehurst. Here at Pelton Community Centre to protest Luke Akehurst, a local resident has a children's party that has been booked for months here. They're livid that this meeting has been put together and is interrupting their party, and the Luke Akehurst supporters have made derogatory comments to them. Luke Akehurst, so fucking vile that him and his mates literally ruin a child's birthday party. That's all very funny. It's true, absolute peak banter timeline in him. Wonder what the MRP poll says in North Durham. It doesn't say. It's called Durham North, is it? Durham North, that's the one. Labour 58, Tories 15, Reform 15, I think that is. Make sure I've got this right. Yeah, so the Labour are 58%, and then Tories and Reform equal second place with 15, Libs and Greens with 5% each. That probably is a seat where you'll want an independent, specifically. Yeah, absolutely cartoon villain territory, yeah. So I mean, if they run an independent, like the problem is there are loads of places where there is too big of a vote split between the progressive challengers. Like for example, look at Stratford and Bow, right? So in Stratford and Bow, Labour on 64, Greens are in second on 17, but Fiona Lally is running for the Revolutionary Communist Party. And so there's going to be a big vote split in the anti-Labour vote, which is actually just going to deliver more fucking Labour MPs anyway. Like in in Holborn and St Pancras, the Greens are on like 18% in second place. Like, do we really think Andrew Feinstein's going to get more votes than that? Like, I wish he was running for the Green Party in that constituency. But there are plenty of seats where the Greens don't have a vote that you could vote an independent. Yeah, I don't think the independents are going to do that well. It's a shame because I really want the independents to do well. I want Sean to do well. I want Leanne to do well. I want Andrew to do well. Yeah, like it's just frustrating that there's just like these vote splits going on, yeah. Yeah, like even you look this is Sean's seat in Southport where the Greens are in third on 14%. That's really tilting. It's just really difficult to try and corral a progressive challenger to the Labour Party. It's literally seats like this where an independent is the perfect candidate because nobody likes anybody apart from Labour in this seat, but there's no like progressive movement outside of Labour either. So you just have to have like an independent challenger at this point. Whereas in places like Stratford, for example, like or Holborn and St Pancras, the Greens are like the challengers to Labour, and so having independent candidates just splits the vote, as Lewis was saying. It's very frustrating. Oh well. We'll see, we'll see. It is an ongoing situation, yeah. What's the North Durham Council makeup? The Durham is a county council. Coalition of other parties and most independent councillors taking over the council in 2021 election. Let me have a look. Like, I mean, if you look at the whole of, like, Durham, I look at, like, the north area, it mostly just looks like Labour to me, and Derwent side independents. So there are, like, independent councillors in, like, the North Durham area. It looks like it, mainly, really and truly. Like, the Conservatives are mostly outside of them. Sometimes it's local election results that point to progressive challenge momentum. Yeah, like the Greens in Sheffield and Bristol. Any chance of Faiza Shaheen standing for the Greens? I mean, they should probably replace the Greens should probably replace their candidate. Like, the comments that he made about October the 7th, for example, that should probably be a reason to replace him with Faiza Shaheen. Like, if she wants to run for the... It's clear that she likes the Greens. She's friends with Majid. She's friends... She was literally suspended from the Labour Party, or was refused to stand... had her candidacy suspended from the Labour Party, because she liked to tweet with somebody standing for the Greens. So, like, I mean, she clearly doesn't dislike the Greens, and their candidate is somebody who's tweeted out, like, things that could lose them that seat if it becomes, like, a national part of the discussion. Like, she's a better candidate than he is. Like, I would advocate, if she wanted to replace him with Pfizer, but I don't know. It would be the biggest middle finger to leadership, yeah. Majid is a transphobe, sadly? You've no fucking shit. That's so sad. We certain IDS is out. Don't really want him back in at all, really. I'm not sure. Is he actually he's not standing down? Hey, Socialist Fox, how you doing? What's the worst IDS could do with no parties already failed as leader? I'm not sure, I guess. I mean, he's not tweeted out anything about trans people. So, I mean, if he's supporting the transphobic candidate, that's bad, but that's not the same as saying or believing transphobic things yourself, so... Yeah, Bottomley standing again, yeah. I mean, Al Jazeera, again, like, what do you expect in the Qatari government to be pro-trans? Like, you know, seems a bit far-fetched, really and truly. Yeah, like, looking through a bunch of, like, Majid's followers, like, he doesn't seem to be following, like, a bunch of, like, transphobic people. Although he does, I mean, like, the first, like, red name on Shingami Eyes that I found was Daniel Hakikachu, which is a bad sign, to be honest. Like, Hakikachu is not a good person. Really? I didn't know that, Sockdem George. Yeah. I'm going to tweet out something against Majid and see what he says. Where's Count Binface standing? I think is he standing at all? I mean, I'm assuming he'd be standing in some like high profile seat of some description. Ah, she's been called a biological realist in the replies. Isn't he in Richmond? I mean, that would make sense, yeah. Yeah, we did talk about it, yeah, Sarah. Essentially, yeah, the claim that was made by Shaheen was that Corbyn wasn't there at the wreath-laying ceremony, which he was. He was there at the wreath-laying ceremony. But the two people are saying have links to the Munich massacre don't have links to the Munich massacre, so it's a fucking damp squib. Lord's Buckethead got sued by the guitarist Buckethead. Or got a cease and desist, sorry, rather.
Because I'm literally a communist.
Hey, thank you for the 5 gifted, Verminsky. Appreciate the support. And welcome to the stream today, 99. Although you've just come in at the wrong time, because I think I'm going to finish up now, because it's quite late and I'm quite tired. As you can see from all of the yawning that I've been doing. But thank you for the 5 gifted. No, I'm saying that
Fucking neoliberalism.
Count Binface used to be called Lord Buckethead, but was sent to cease and desist by the guitarist called Buckethead for an intellectual property.
Fucking neoliberalism. Fucking neoliberalism.
I mean, I have been burning the candle at both ends making content this week. Like, 7 days a week, 4 hours a day streaming does take it out of you eventually, unfortunately. So, you know, I'll tell you what though, well, it's Sunday, so I'll send you into SK the Crusader, who's going to be stuck in the YouTube zone. So that should be a good cool down for the evening, which should be good fun.
Fucking neoliberalism.
And as always, appreciate the subs, the memberships, the bits, all of the continued contributions, all of the follows, all of the new chatters. We've had new chatters today. Appreciate all of you jumping in and saying hello. I will be back tomorrow. It'll be Monday, so it's an evening stream, as we do on a Monday evening. Thank you very much. Stay safe.